Good evening and welcome to the City Council of the City of Moreno Valley study session. Today's date is March 14th, 2023. I now call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by myself, and we don't have any invocation today, so if you would please join me in the pledge to our flag. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Baca, Santa Cruz.
Here.
Councilmember Marcus.
Here.
Councilmember Bernard.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Delgado.
Here, ma'am.
And Mayor Cabrera.
Here. Staff introductions, please.
Jane Halstead, City Clerk.
Paul Bradvica, Deputy City Clerk.
Patty Rodriguez, Senior Deputy City Clerk.
Steve Quintanilla, Interim City Attorney.
Mike Lee, City Manager.
Brian Mohan, Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer, City Treasurer.
Michael Lloyd, Assistant City Manager for Development Services.
Manuel Mancha, Community Development Director.
Melissa Walker, Director of Public Works.
Jeremy Bubnick, Parks and Community Services Director.
Ken Reichel, Chief Police.
And Jesse Park, Fire Chief.
Thank you very much, staff. Public comments on matters on the agenda only. Pursuant to the Brown Act, public comments shall be limited to only those items listed on this study session agenda. Each person shall be allowed a total of 3 minutes to comment on each item on the study session agenda. I may, however, reduce the total time for speakers to comment if there are numerous speakers requesting to comment on the same item. That may hinder the City Council's ability to complete its business. If a total time limit is placed on public comments for any given item, each person shall be provided with the same amount of time to comment. A reminder that the city is currently offering Spanish translation services if anyone is interested in this feature. Un recuerdo que la ciudad actualmente ofrece servicios de traducción en español. Si alguien está interesado, por favor, nos avisan. Before we hear public comments this evening, I ask and encourage everyone participating to keep their comments respectful toward others, especially toward individuals speaking. I embrace and support the First Amendment right to free speech, including everyone's right to speak at this meeting and to share their views about issues concerning our city. But we can be more productive by being civil and respectful toward one another in this meeting. Finally, I ask that speakers bear in mind that comments will be limited for each speaker, and I encourage everyone to refrain from duplicating comments already made by others, other than to note that you agree or disagree with the prior comments. In order to preserve the meeting decorum, council and staff will not respond during public comments. City Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
We have one request to speak on A1 and A4.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And can we go ahead and call up the public speakers, please?
A1 and A4.
Brandon Karn.
And a quick question, Madam Clerk, or
just
staff could clarify.
Are they 3 minutes each, or are they going to be done at one time?
We can take them separately, right? So 3 minutes for each
Okay.
individual item.
3 minutes for each one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have 3 minutes. Timer.
Do we have the clock here? Just a second to get the clock up.
Well, hello. I have a number of concerns about this item coming up. We have an office of directly elected mayor. I believe a large reason that this item is up tonight is because some of the council simply just have personal dislike for who won the November election. And I didn't vote for Ulysses Cabrera in November, so that's not a personal stake while I'm here. It's really interesting how we had to endure 6-7 years of Yixtian Gutierrez on the council, acting very unethically and intentionally not doing things with the responsibilities we're discussing, like boards and commissions, intentionally not interviewing people for years, appointing people that were volunteers in his campaign, donors of his. And it's interesting, 3 months into the term of a new mayor, a mayor you all know I have not always agreed with plenty of times. I've had the ACLU involved some instances with the city. Why are we, suddenly, last year you all voted to keep the powers of the mayor as they were when you had Yixtian here with someone that you liked. But when you don't, with Jaime Hurtado not being elected, suddenly that shifts. And literally anyone else, I think, besides Jaime Hurtado being elected mayor, this would be now in play. I have a lot of concerns about the power. I mean, if you don't want a citywide mayor, do like Menifee, put the item on the ballot, have the voters get rid of it. You can do that in 2024, put a special election item. Boards and commissions, I have lots of concerns with, especially after I went to the Arts Commission meeting. I had participated in an Arts Fest. It was a successful event, but you know, most of those boards and commissions do not have vacancies filled. They have not for years. Yixtian did that on purpose because he did not want the public participating. It was simply that. I really think at this point, you don't have very many people volunteering for them, no matter what district they're in. That justification last week was total nonsense. 3 of you just don't want Ulysses to appoint people. It's that simple. He would rather, no problem if Jaime Hurtado was here. But those boards rarely have quorum. The times they do meet, they'd get very little done, in my opinion, and I've been part of several of them for years. The Historic Preservation Board. I was around a little bit when the Arts Commission ran the Vanguard Art Gallery, which went out of business. There was a lot of questionable use with taxpayer funds by the individual that was running that. At this point, you get very few applications from anybody in any part of the city. It's really my opinion. You should look at the legal requirements because I think you have to keep the planning commission. I really just think as a city, you should dissolve and eliminate every single board and commission at this point because this becomes a distraction, a ping pong ball political item. You know, the city council really does very little in itself to appoint people or recommend people. The city spends a lot of resources on this item and we get little for nothing in response to it. What happened last week was purely political. I mean, the idea of District 1, you could have said boo, and 3 of you would have voted it just because it's Ulysses. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
And did you have a second item that you wanted to speak on as well?
A4, yeah.
Item A4.
Okay.
Can we go ahead and take that comment now as well? If that's okay with staff? Okay. Go right ahead, Mr. Korn.
All right, so one of my concerns is about the capital improvements plan is we're not distributing our resources equally with infrastructure. Moreno Beach Drive, that interchange has been taking many years to be fully constructed. It's been under construction for what, like 5 years? But when we had Theodore Street or World Logistics Center Parkway, that interchange being done, that was studied 5-6 times with our resources of the public. It's really interesting how inequitable things are, but when the places that the city actually needs to commute, Moreno Beach Drive, I have a lot of questions about the interchange or Redlands Boulevard because it's been studied, but it has no actual blueprints or plans or schematics created at this point, and yet it's used like 12 times more with capacity than Theodore Street is or Gilman Springs Road is. So my question about this is, where are we as a city looking at that corridor finally being developed? You have Prologis now fully developed there. You have Aldi expanding. You have the Skechers building nearing completion. Why is it not yet ready or being close to construction phase yet? So I'm really concerned and interested in that. I also have a lot of concerns throughout the community that there are not enough sidewalks in certain areas and a lot of roads that could not be paved. I have been impressed with Alessandra Boulevard down by Gilman Springs Road. I am glad to see that finally paved in some other places. So there is some positive feedback from me on this item that I'm glad to see finally being done. But some of these elements take years and years and years to get done, but you have the funding for them. But for political reasons, sometimes who donates to your campaigns, particularly certain property owners on the eastern side of the city, certain projects that we need now have not been taken care of. So I really think that there needs to be a lot more focus in the general plan on Redlands Boulevard in particular, and a number of places that don't have sidewalks. I mean, there's a lot of high schools that are connected in this community where the teenagers have to walk. They have to walk through the dirt, through the mud. For years it took just to get a sidewalk near the county hospital built because the city took years and years to do it. So I'm really looking to see some amendments done to this plan that you improve that. And there's a lot of infrastructure that's being neglected. I would just say like potholes, especially after the latest rainstorms we've been having, that I think a little bit more faster response time. So I have a lot of different concerns about that. I'll elaborate more in an email, but that's a little bit I have. Thank you.
The next speaker is Bob Palomares on A1 and A2.
Good evening, Council. Chiefs, thank you. On A1, the mayoral duties, I think if you review, and this is nothing personal, Cabrera's background, and he failed, period, to have control of all the duties that were there previously when Mayor Gutierrez was there. And there's a whole bunch of them. I've got a list here of from the beginning till, till I think maybe even the last council meeting when, he's raised concern about the choice of people on committees or boards, whatever, and then he does the exact opposite of what he protested against, of him or anyone selecting their people. That's what he did. I know he says, they all showed up, and everyone that filed to get on one of those boards or commissions was selected, and nobody was left off. Well, yeah, those are all, and great people, but the majority of them were all handpicked by him. So you can't have it both ways. He puts, no, let's not do that anymore the way they used to do it. And he acts like it was a free, open market, saying, well, District 1 didn't go out there and try to get anybody in or this or that. What I'm trying to say is I think we should leave it up to the entire board, not just the mayor, on picking people for the boards and commissions. But as far as his duties, you have to earn that. I mean, he got censured. I think 4 other council members that are up there can make the right decision regarding this, where, can you trust him? Because his track record isn't very good. And, it should be an honor, not a right to do it, to be on there. So, thank you.
Tom Gerald Sr. on A1 and A2.
Before we start the clock, I just have a quick question. Do I get 3 minutes for each item?
That is correct.
Okay, just want to confirm. That's why I inferred it.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
if you don't mind, could we restart the clock just
Okay. I'll
back to
wait.
3 minutes? Thank you.
Tom Gerald Sr. speaking on behalf of myself and Mayor Cabrera, Mayor Pro Tem Delgado, council members, members of staff, and the public. Tom Gerald again speaking on behalf of myself. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. Good thing. One of the things of being the maybe not the oldest in the room, but somebody's been around a while, right from our very first meeting. This issue of the how we pick, particularly planning commission appointments and the committee members. Candidly, when I was always right out of the gate in favor of a popularly elected mayor. We actually discussed that way back before we incorporated whether we're going to have that or not. But we went with the general law city rotation system, and almost within 2-3 years, it was a big public demand. Past councils laughed at it, said, no, it's not important. And then they ran a poll, and it was like 65, almost 70% popularity. So a couple of years later, we had the election, got on our way. But somewhere in that program, they came up with this idea of the mayor having the amount of power that they have, and with this slate. And candidly, I didn't like it. I almost didn't vote for it. I was, when I came up with it. But then I thought, politics is a step-by-step business. And even though I would like to have done everything at one time, I didn't like that program. And I didn't like Mayor Exton having that much say-so. Not anything personal, but I just didn't like that much concentration of power. I have a mentor from Orange County, builder, developer, quality guy, but he does what we call infill construction, works in a lot of different cities. We were talking about our planning commission years ago, and he asked how we select. And before I could give him my full answer, he said, well, most cities, each council picks one, each council member picks one from their district, and they have to be approved by the overall council, and if they fail, then they bring another one up, which I think is really smart, because I was shocked when I found out District 1 didn't have any representation. We desperately need that, and not just because I work in District 1, but just call it fairness. It's just simple, basic democracy. The other two, can be picked at large. So that's what I'd like to see for that program. Now on, I don't know if we need to reset the clock, but on item A2, as far as the Mayor Pro Tem, keep it simple, leave it as is. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's kind of an innocuous position. I mean, it's not, it carries a little bit of title, but it's not, no extra money. So, and maybe they go to a few meetings and get a little stipends for that, but, there's no big whoop to it. It's an honorarium, and I'm perfectly okay the way it is. And if I can just go back to why, like, I don't like the 2-year term, because basically each mayor, whether it's you or a past mayor or a future mayor, we get 1 year of service on them. They're back campaigning again. And that I don't think is good. One of the main reasons we wanted a popular elected mayor is continuity of mission, continuity of programs, and that's what a mayor can bring, and that's very, very important. So those are my reasons. So thank you for giving me audience, and appreciate your time. And kudos to our police and our fire and our public works, and doing a great job out there. Thank you.
The next speaker is Pete, and he's going to speak on A1.
Well, I want to talk about the duties of the mayor and what they do. I can tell you from my experience, you ain't the first mayor that had the venom of hate like all the rest of them, that you're going to select your people. I've been thrown off by mayors that want to be just as dictatorial as anybody else. I think I'm glad that at least one spoke up for District 1. That's where I grew up. The red line of District 1, which none of you know the history of and where that red line is. But all you have to do is drive around there and see what old houses are there. You'll find it. It's still there just like it was when I was in grade school. So, if you guys want to do what you do, I think every one of you council are just as important as the mayor. And each one of you should go out and select or try to find somebody from your district to at least represent you. Ray Tanner, which happened to be a mayor, was after the first recall, put me on there. He was a 5th grade teacher. Me and him, and when I was in grade school, he tried to teach me education by the Board of Education, and we didn't get along too well. He was more powerful than me, but that's just the way it is. But if you don't like my attitude, blame Ray Tanner, because he used his board real well. So, it's kind of the way it is. So, Mayor, you ain't no different than the last ones that were up there. Some were good, but there was a lot of dictators just like you, just like the last one before you, and some before that. You're not old enough to know what the hell I'm talking about, but you ain't the first. And I don't appreciate the way you do things, and to belittle your other colleagues up there for what you did to them. Make everybody listen to that. That's a bunch of bull, Well, you weren't born of God, although you think you are, and some of the people that got up here that know you all your life tell you are, but you're not. You're only going to be there. You might be only there 2 years, but the most you can be there is 4 years, and that's it. You're out of here. The door, stage left. So that's kind of the way it is. And Elena, did you learn any history about the building you were in?
And the final speaker, Bob Palomares for A2.
When I grow up, I want to be just like Pete. What I wanted to say on A2 about my only thought is, why don't we keep it 2 years like the mayor? This way you don't have to worry about it every year or whatever, 11 months, or you keep it for 2 years, and when the next mayor or whoever runs and is elected, you start over. But I think, this way you just forget the middle portion of time. That's all. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that'll conclude our public comment period of the meeting. And the first item that we have here on the agenda for Section A business is item A1, and that is a discussion of proposed changes to the scope of the mayor's duties and responsibilities. And we have a report from our city attorney.
So this item came up before in January, and there was extensive public comment and deliberation over it. It's my understanding that there is going to be a draft ordinance presented at the next regularly scheduled meeting. That's my understanding. So instead of going over the history of what happened here and and how we got here today, I thought it might be better if I just go through the list, and we went through this list last time. Go through the list and just kind of focus a little bit or pause a little bit over the ones where there are proposed changes. So I'd like to just go through this as fast as I can. And if I get off script, somebody let me know, because I can't see this small type from here. Okay. So I'm going to go through the duties and responsibilities. The first one is the mayor serving as presiding officer at all meetings. There's no recommended changes for that one. Oh, there you go. The next one is calling special meetings of the city council. No changes, except that everyone should note that a majority of the city council may also call a special meeting. Establishing city council subcommittee and appointing all members to city council subcommittees. The recommendation is to have these appointments subject to the approval of a majority vote of the city council. And that
Hey,
you're going to
Steve,
see that.
Can Brian do your remote while you speak?
Yes,
That'd make it
thank you.
quicker. That way you can.
I'm really terrible with that. Like walking and chewing gum. I have a tough time with that. Calling special meeting? Oh, okay. Where are we now? Establishing council subcommittee? Okay. And you're going to see a common thread throughout these recommendations, whereas there's going to be a recommendation that all various appointments by the mayor be approved by the city council. Next one. Designating a sufficient number of police officers to attend and keep order at public meetings. There's no recommended changes. Appointing all members of city commissions, boards, committees, subject to the approval of a majority vote of the entire membership of the city council. There's a recommendation that each council member or each district be represented in all city commissions, boards, and committees. And what was suggested is that maybe, that each council member would submit nominations, and the mayor selects from those nominations for each district and appoints subject to the approval of the majority of the city council. Next. I got my pages mixed up here. So receiving all correspondence. Oh, thank you. This is better. Which one is that? Oh, okay. Appointing alternate members to commissions and boards. The recommendation, again, is to have each district represented on all boards and committees and commissions. And again, the suggestion is that nominations be submitted by each council member to the mayor, and the mayor selects nominees from that list, which ensures that there's a representative on every board and commission from each district. Making emergency appointments, the recommendation here is just to have these emergency appointments ratified by the city council at a subsequent meeting. These pages stuck together. Okay. Ordering persons. Hang on. Oh, there you go. Two pages stuck. Requiring the sergeant at arms to carry out all orders given by the mayor. The recommendation here is to revise this to simply add consistent with applicable law. Next. Ordering persons interrupting a public meeting to be seated or keep quiet and call for their arrest if the person does not comply. The recommendation is to eliminate this and replace it with the following: providing a warning to anyone who is causing actual disruption to the meeting and ordering their removal as authorized by Government Code Section 54957.9. Next. Serving as the primary liaison between the city and any other jurisdictions, unless otherwise designated by the mayor at any time. The recommendation is to eliminate this one, and this would simply just allow each council member to engage with representatives of other jurisdictions. Next. Making public appearances on behalf of the entire city at special events. The recommendation is to revise it to read, making public appearances on behalf of the entire city at special events, which shall not preclude council members from also making appearances at the same special event if the event takes place in their district or the event involves volunteers or participants from their districts. Next. Receiving all correspondence directed to the city's chief elected official, that would be the mayor. The recommendation is to revise this to read, receiving all correspondence directed to the city's chief elected official, with copies of such correspondence being provided simultaneously to each council member. Next. Serving as a primary spokesperson for the city on all matters affecting the city, regardless of the affected district. The recommendation is to eliminate this, and this will permit each council member to communicate with the media and their constituents on any matter affecting their districts. Next. Serving as a primary spokesperson for the city on all matters affecting the city. Oh, that's a double one. Okay. Presiding, are we there? Okay. Presiding over all press conferences on behalf of the city, unless otherwise designated by the mayor at any given time. The recommendation is to revise this to read, presiding over all press conferences on behalf of the city regarding issues affecting the entire city, unless otherwise designated by the mayor at any given time. This shall not preclude individual council members from presiding over press conferences regarding issues affecting their districts. Even though those, oh, that's actually a note. Next. Publicizing and promoting current city programs, services, and special events. The recommendation is to eliminate this. This will basically just allow each council member to publicize and promote programs, services, and events in their districts. Next, publicizing and promoting policies and other matters approved by the city council. The recommendation is to eliminate. This basically will just allow each council member to publicize and promote policies affecting their districts. Next. Representing the city on matters of general concern to the city via the broadcast media. The recommendation is to revise this to read, representing the city on matters of general concern to the city via the broadcast media, while permitting council members to engage with the broadcast media to represent their districts on any matters affecting their districts. Next. Approving the issuance of city proclamations and signing off proclamations that have received confirmation of support by at least 2 council members. The recommendation is to revise this to read as follows. Approving the issuance of city proclamations and signing off proclamations that have received confirmation of support by a majority of the city council at a noticed public meeting of the city council or recommended by the city manager. Next. Approving the issuance of plaques and signing them if necessary and feasible. The recommendation is to revise this to read as follows. Approving the issuance of plaques and signing them if necessary and feasible, if approved by a majority of the City Council at a notice public meeting of the City Council or recommended by the City Manager. Next, approving and signing all letters of commendation. The recommendation is to revise this to read as follows. Approving and signing all letters of commendation if approved by a majority of the City Council at a notice public meeting of the City Council or recommended by the City Manager. So we're seeing a trend here, or a pattern. Next. Approving monetary awards as recommended by the Police Chief or City Manager. There's a recommendation to revise this to read as follows. Approving monetary awards if recommended by a majority of the City Council at a notice public meeting of the City Council, the Police Chief or City Manager. Next. Selecting recipients eligible to receive an award of valor. The recommendation is to revise this to read as follows. Approving recipients eligible to receive an award of valor if recommended by a majority of the City Council at a notice public meeting of the City Council. Next, presenting all proclamations, plaques, letters of commendation, keys to the city, and awards of valor unless the mayor designates or approves the designation of a city council member or other city official to make the subject representation. The recommendation is to revise this to read as follows. Presenting all proclamations, plaques, letters of commendation, keys to the city, and awards of valor unless the particular proclamation, plaque, letter of commendation, key to the city, or award of valor is being presented to an individual or business that either resides or is physically located in a particular district, and the council member of the respective district requests to make the presentation. Next, ordering the suspension of normal bidding or purchasing requirements and allow for single and sole sourcing procurement unless otherwise provided by applicable law. The recommendation is to eliminate this since whenever you suspend some of your bidding requirements, it's controlled by state law. Next, nominating the Mayor Pro Tem subject to a majority vote of the entire membership of the City Council. The recommendation is to eliminate this and replace it. And basically, the default is that individual council members will be able to make nominations. Next, requiring witnesses to be sworn at public hearings. The recommendation is to eliminate, and this was actually one of my recommendations, is to eliminate this one. Because the swearing of witnesses typically is administered by the city clerk. And we don't always, there's only some cases where we have to swear in witnesses at a public hearing. Next, approve special proceedings for joint meetings. The recommendation is to eliminate this and to replace it with the following. Oh, actually, it's not a replacement. So this could be done basically on an ad hoc basis. When I was here last time, we had a joint meeting with the school district board. And so their attorney and I got together, the city clerk and their board secretary got together to set up the meeting. Approving all items on city council meeting agendas. The recommendation is to eliminate this and simply require that the mayor be required to place items on the agenda at a meeting, just like the other council members have to do. Next, approving the order of all agendas for city council meetings and meetings of other legislative bodies solely consisting of members of the city council. Recommendations to eliminate this. And one of the things that I've suggested since I've been here is that the city council add an item to your agenda called approval of the agenda. And that will allow the council to reorganize the agenda to accommodate members of the public. And we've done this before on an ad hoc basis. Next, designating the parliamentarian for city council meetings and meetings of other legislative bodies solely consisting of members of the city council. The recommendation is to eliminate this and to just amend your rules of procedure that designates someone to serve as parliamentarian. Typically, it's the city attorney. I don't like doing it. It's my understanding that Councilmember Bernard has a lot of background with parliamentary procedure. Next, screening applicants for the Planning Commission and holding interviews unless the mayor designates the duty to another member of the city council. The proposal is to eliminate this, so all council members have an opportunity to review the planning commissioner applications and to interview applicants. I know that this was an issue before. And I understand, Mayor, I believe, Mayor, you allowed everyone to review their applications this year. Next, reviewing all board, commission, or committee applications. Eliminate this one. And again, this will allow all the council members to review the applications. Next, directing the city clerk to make a local appointments list. The recommendation is to eliminate this, and this was my recommendation because on an annual basis, state law requires the city clerk to post a local appointments list. Next, excusing the city manager, city attorney, or city clerk from attending city council meetings. The recommendation is to eliminate because there's no requirement the city manager, city attorney, or city clerk be formally excused from council meetings, or even to be present. Next, reapproving all city-paid travel for any council member who attends to attend a meeting that has members of the city council as members of the legislative body presiding over the respective meeting in situations wherein the subject council member does not officially serve on the subject legislative body. The proposal is to eliminate this, probably because it's just confusing, but the way that this would apply is when a council member wants to go attend some ceremony, groundbreaking or conference that's hosted by an outside agency, they would have to get permission from the mayor. So again, the recommendation is to eliminate this and allow council members to decide for themselves which events they want to attend, and provided that the costs are within the applicable budget. Next. Oh, it's our final one. Approving all censures of any council member who has committed any crimes of moral turpitude or violated any city policies or regulations, subject to a majority vote of the city council. The recommendation is to eliminate this, and if any member of the council wants to censure one of their colleagues, they would have to make a motion to get it added to an agenda. So that's it. Those are all the rules and the duties and responsibilities of the mayor.
Thank you for that report, City Attorney. And we'll go ahead and essentially have a discussion. We can have a conversation about the particular item before we move on to the next items we have on the agenda as well. So I definitely would like to hear from my colleagues here. I do want to just mention briefly, and if you would like to speak, please hit your speaker button here. I'll make sure to call on you as well. The last time this was on the agenda, my main concern with it was just the process that it went through. Obviously, the motion originally came from District 1 council member and seconded by District 2 council member, Mayor Pro Tem. And the third vote came from council member Bernard from District 4. And that's how it ended up getting on our agenda. So the main issue I had was just the process with the difference in the direction that was given to staff, and then that our city attorney only met with 2 council members in particular, and made revisions, proposed changes, and then put it on the agenda without getting input from myself or my understanding any other members of the council. So I wish that process would have gone differently, because the way that it went essentially is kind of predetermining the changes. And at that time, I had even mentioned that I didn't mind looking at the mayoral duties. I think that I said I was open to it. And my expectation was that it was going to come to the city council, and then we would have a discussion about what changes we would make to that particular mayor duties. But that's not what happened. Two council members exclusively gave input to our city attorney regarding what changes should be made. That was put on the agenda, and so that's what I took issue with. So just wanted to clarify that, but I'll have more to say after, and would love to hear from my colleagues. We have a request from Mayor Pro Tem.
So yes, it is in fact, we did look at these, and again, following what your whole mantra was, is we need change up here and the way things are run up here. We looked at that and we said that the majority of our council should lead this city. And obviously you're the head for sure, 100%. You earn the right to be our mayor in a fair election, 100%. But I don't think that it should be one person making all of the decisions. I think it should be more of a council. That was the driving force behind taking a look at this. I told you last time that I accept it. I accept the fact that I did approve it in July or June of 22. I did. But knowing where we want to move forward, we want to move as a body and not as an individual making policy and then us just having to deal with it. I think that the suggestions that we're making here tonight, if you look at the overall theme of the suggestions or the way we drafted it, there's not a single person up here that are making the rules. It's a majority. And we're still going majority, right? I mean, that's how politics in our country is run, the majority. Look at the Congress, look at the House of Representatives, everything's by majority. We're no different. We're not special. The way it should be run is by the majority. And I know that there's no, literally, and I'm telling you guys, and I'm putting it on public record, this has nothing to do with the way I feel about you as a person or that position. It's the way this should be run up here. So moving forward, I desire to have the body of the City Council of Moreno Valley make decisions moving the city forward and not just one person. That's all this is about. So that's my 2 cents, and I hope to move past this tonight. I hope that we can move past this and just get, like you said the last time, we need to get to city business. So.
Next, we have Councilmember Bernard.
So I want to propose a compromise. I know boards and commissions are where some of this hang-up happened to be about representation. So I want to know if anybody is open to each district getting at least one person that they can recommend to the boards and commission. Because I'm looking at them and most of them are odd, so each district will get at least one. And then whoever's left over, the mayor would be able to appoint at large. So, for instance, District 1 would have a say-so in picking at least one person on a board or commission. District 2, District 3, District 4, and then whatever's left over, the mayor could then choose those people at large so that the mayor also has an input on who goes on the boards and commissions. And then when the slate comes before us, then it's I pick someone, Councilmember Santa Cruz picks someone, Mayor Pro Tem Delgado, Councilmember Marquez, and then the mayor has picked someone. I know it's a little messy because of how the boards and commissions currently, but as like someone from our district has an expiration date coming up, then we should be able to replace them with whoever we want to kind of start to kind of get the palate cleansed. So I was just thinking that as one compromise to some of the boards and commission issues, because I think that's what it is. Then everybody would at least say, at least I had one person on there, And then the mayor still gets to pick whoever he wants. So it's not just us doing it as a majority council, and then the mayor gets no say so. I come from a little different aspect from previous, which is I want fairness across the board. And so some of the fairness is going to be a compromise, and it's not 100% perfect, but it's better than I think what we've had previously that has caused so much contention and so many issues.
Do you want an answer, like, from us now? How does this work as far as if she suggests something?
Yeah, because I think they're looking for direction tonight, so we want to make sure we.
Yeah, and since in a study session we can't technically give official direction because there's no votes, I think we could just have an open discussion. So she posed a proposal and a question, and then if we want to, respond to it, we can just kind of proceed having an open discussion. So if you'd like to chime in and respond to that, feel free.
I'm all about that. And the reason is everybody will have someone representing their district on a board or commission. And that's all, the goal is just that. I don't want to have a majority. I just want to have someone from our districts represent and have a say on a board or commission. So I'm good with that.
I'm good with that too. That is all we're looking for is representation from each district. So, we would be looking at the commissions and then we would bring our representatives so that every district is represented. So we'd look at who's sitting on the boards now. So we wouldn't want to take anyone off. So if there's it's filled with people from District 1 and 2, then District 3 and 4 need to recruit and bring those people to the mayor for him to put it on the agenda so that we could get these commissions filled. But it wouldn't just be on him to go out and see what district they're from or do any of that. We would be responsible. And that's exactly what I was asking for, this discussion to happen when I brought this item the last time. So, and I know that at the time I proposed tonight's study session, I also have on the agenda, so we'll be bringing it back, City Attorney, right, on the 21st for an ordinance. That's already been motioned and second and voted on.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, and I think if I could just add in to your idea there, your proposal, I think that's a good middle ground there, right? A compromise, like you said, because I think that allows also me the opportunity as well to, bring folks forward and also give every council member the opportunity to nominate, right, folks from their own district. And like I mentioned at the last council meeting, I agree that the district representation should be a factor that we consider in who serves on the commissions and boards, but it shouldn't be a deciding factor because there are other variables such as merits, experience, education levels, being able to attend meetings and things like that. So, yeah, I think I'm amenable to your proposal there that you mentioned, and so I would be supportive of that as well. And I do see Councilmember Marquez here as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. Each one of our districts should have representation in our districts. It's way overdue, way overdue. And I say that because on our past council members, I was told not to attend ribbon cuttings. And that's the honest truth. Thank God they're gone. They're not around. This is a great idea. When it comes to ribbon cutting, we should be there. And we should be the one presenting the proclamation or the recognition, not from someone else from a different district. So when it comes to ribbon cutting, yes, the mayor is there, but that representative from that district should be the one presenting that certificate to that business owner or whatever that event's at in their district. I agree, again, picking one for each district. I don't agree on the planning commission. I think the way we should do it, and the way it used to be, we're in this chamber on a Saturday. If you have 2-3 openings for commissions, planning commission, they should be interviewed on social media or the public's invited to come in. It used to be that, but it took a drastic change to where our former mayor wanted to appoint his own people. That's my opinion. So when it comes to planning commission, I don't think it should be each one of us appoints someone from our district. That should be interviewed here and selected up here on a vote, not by a council member appointing someone to the planning commission. Got to remember, they're the only, I believe that they're the only committee that gets a stipend. Is that correct? And I think that process should be done up here on a special meeting to interview those applicants, and that vote's taken up here, not picked by each individual per district. And as for the other issues we have, I don't see where if you don't want the mayor to have all these responsibilities, let's go back and appoint the mayors, the rotation like we used to have. Because that I recall, we never had these problems. But all of a sudden, we had elected mayor, which I knew wasn't gonna go over well in you know, the years that it was proposed. I was against it. I've always said there are gonna be problems, and we have problems. So if we don't want to give the mayor these responsibilities, I'm not saying all of them, but some, then let's go back to rotation and not have an elected mayor, and go back to 5 districts. And we'll solve that problem. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I don't know who you were talking about when you said, thank God they're gone, but I hope to God it was not Dr. Carla Thornton or the late Mayor Pro Tem Victoria Baca. That was very offensive.
And to just add on to that, I actually think that the idea of public interviews, I know it will take more work, and I actually like that idea. And the Planning Commission is slightly different, as mentioned, because they do receive a stipend. Every other board and commission does not receive a stipend. But I think that's a good way, because it also allows the public additional opportunity to actually come out and, you know, participate in the discussion, and also be here in the room while we conduct those public interviews. So that idea of conducting public interviews for the Planning Commission in particular, I would support that as well. I think that is the most transparent, fair way to do that. So I would support that idea as well. And I don't see any other requests to speak here. I do have some other questions and a few other comments that I'd like to make. Any requests to speak before I continue? Okay, seeing none, I'll just share a few more comments and then a couple of questions for our staff as well. So just for clarification, in the January council meeting, when this item was first on the agenda, Mr. City Attorney, the proposed changes that you went through today, are they exactly the same as that January agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, just for clarification purposes. And then, again, just to reiterate, the last time that the mayoral duties were voted on and put on the agenda prior to this time around, when was that, once again, just for everybody's information, when was the last time that the mayoral duties were changed, and also what was the vote on that particular, in that council meeting?
Mayor, are you asking for the date of the actual meeting or the votes of each council member related to that meeting?
Essentially both, and I believe it was around June or July of last year. I don't remember the exact date,
Yeah.
but I believe it was June or July of last year.
It was a June meeting, but the city clerk would have to have that information. I don't think anybody has that information on hand.
I believe it was a unanimous vote, but I just wanted to ask to clarify what the vote was when we actually changed it and added all of these particular ones. Yes, so I do see here Councilmember Bernard actually, thank you for this, answers my question. So the answer to my question is that the item was on our city council agenda last June 21st of 2022, and that was approved and passed. 4 yeses. It was, I voted yes, Councilmember Baca Santa Cruz voted yes, Mayor Pro Tem Delgado voted yes, and then Mayor Gutierrez voted yes. Councilmember Marquez was absent from that meeting. So it passed unanimously to change it to what it is today. So thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate that. That answers that question. And Mayor Pro Tem kind of touched on this already. I wanted to ask and just get your input, as well as Councilmember Baca Santa Cruz from District 1, because last June, as you just heard, the way that the vote went, and I went back and actually watched the tape of that meeting, and there weren't really many questions. There wasn't very much discussion. It was pretty non-controversial, and it passed. 4 yeses and 1 absent. So, I mean, at that time, there weren't any real issues. There were not any concerns. So, just wanted to give Councilmember Baca Santa Cruz an opportunity as well to answer the question, because last year you voted to give all these duties to the former mayor, who's a good friend of yours. You work together on various things, various issues, but Mayor Pro Tem already kind of clarified that, but would love to get an answer from you as well as to why back in June of last year you voted to give these powers to the then mayor, but this year, just 2 months after I got into office, you made the proposal to change it and change all of these duties.
Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. In June of 2022, I had been elected for 1 month. I came in under a mayor who had led the city for the past 7 years with honesty, integrity, and I felt that he deserved to have the duties. Since then, since I've been elected, and it hasn't even been a year, the current mayor has lied through his campaign, has said that the actions that he never broke the Brown Act, that he's never broken campaign rules, that he was following the law, a bunch of lies. His campaign was based on lies. He used those lies to win the seat. Since then, he's been censored twice, once for harassment and in order to take sexual harassment training. A second time he was censured for breaking the Brown Act and required to take training for the Brown Act. He's been asked over and over by the public, have you done those trainings? And we don't know because he won't answer. So giving the duties even that we're still leaving in there doesn't feel right. But you won an election. You won that election fair and square. It was, I believe in the voting. The people who voted, those are who gets to make the decisions. They voted you in. Even though it was based on lies, we have to move forward and you get the title of mayor. But to bestow all of these rights that we gave to somebody who we trusted, it's just not, we can't do that. So we need to take responsibilities for our own districts. We need to go out and do our own work. There's not really even that much that's being removed from there. Most of them would just revert back to ordinances that are municipal codes and the such. The mayor pro tem, right now it says that only the mayor can nominate a mayor pro tem. We don't even follow that. So there's items in there that we don't even do it that way. So it needs to be cleaned up. I think that we missed one item that I'm asking that we add on there is to revise this document every time a new mayor is appointed or elected. So I'd like to add that as an additional new duty, that we revise this document each time, because we should take into account the person that is sitting in the seat, and whether it's you or the next person who runs for that seat. It's definitely not going to be me next year. So whoever it is, I think that we should review this document every time, not just when you take the seat. Next time too, we should review it again. But definitely what has changed is a lot since June of 2022.
So thank you for that answer, and just wanted to clarify as well that back whenever the censures happened, again, there was no conclusions that actually said that I did any of that behavior. Again, it was an opinion of the, if you could please keep it down. Someone is out of order in the back. The sergeant at arms could please keep an eye on the public. Let's just be respectful, please. So that is not completely true. Definitely mincing and twisting words there as well. And then one of the things that is proposed to change today is to take away the ability of the mayor to essentially bring forth censures, which I don't see an issue with. But again, I think it's just interesting that you were willing to give that censure ability to your friend, the former mayor, but you now want to take that away now that I'm in office. So just find that very interesting. And but I appreciate you sharing to the public your perspective on that as well. And Mayor Pro Tem, you kind of already answered that question. So if you care to elaborate any more, feel free to do that. But I think
I don't want to elaborate anymore. I just think that we need to move forward. So is this coming back to the board on the 21st?
That's correct. Yeah, it was voted on at a previous council meeting. So
Okay, thank you.
just for the public's awareness, most folks should be aware of it, but as was already stated, last year, I ran for office in the November election for mayor, and the public selected me to serve as mayor here in the city. Just pure facts that I want to share. Both Mayor Pro Tem Delgado and Councilmember Baca Santa Cruz endorsed and supported one of my opponents in the election. And so, again, just purely factual information. And I think that for the most part, the changes that are being proposed are coming from a good place. But the perception of it, again, because of who supported who in the last election, and that person actually that you supported now works for our former mayor, now supervisor. He got hired to work in his office. So it just doesn't look right. There's a part of it that just doesn't look right. I'm not saying that that is your motivation for doing this, but it is something that definitely in the public eye, unfortunately, it doesn't look right. So again, I think a lot of this comes from a good place to try to even the playing field and make things more transparent. To a lot of folks out there, it doesn't look very good because of the optics of it, because of the politics, unfortunately. But like you said, I think we will move forward, and this discussion will help us to come to some kind of agreement, hopefully, as to what the new mayor duties will look like, and we can move forward with that. So I do have a question as well regarding there's a couple of things within the mayor duties for issuing proclamations, keys to the city, awards of valor, and things like that. And we haven't really done that. I know we've given out some certificates of recognition, but just if staff could help us understand if those proposed changes are adopted next week, how would that process look like to actually give proclamations and give certificates, and how would that look like if these changes are adopted? And I'll give staff just a moment. I do see Mayor Pro Tem here.
My comment is just very, very brief. I think we do that now. I get calls from city staff asking if it's okay to use my signature on proclamations, and that's all we're asking for. And I think it would be wrong if I saw my signature on a proclamation or a key to the city or something like, or a Medal of Valor or something like that, that I had no say-so in. And not that I want to have say-so because I have power. That's my signature. That means I've agreed to whatever proclamation. So if a certain assembly member, you decide that, because he's a good friend of yours, and you decide that you want to give him the key to our city, and I wouldn't want my name on that proclamation. I'll tell you right now, I would not want my name on that proclamation. So I think we're doing it right now. When I get calls and say, hey, Mayor or Ed, is it okay if we use your name on the proclamation? I said, send it to me. So they send it to me, and it's the baseball kids or something. I said, absolutely, go for it. That's what we're doing now. So I'm not, and that's what that's what we want to change it to, is what we're doing. So I think in writing, we want to change it to what we're doing in our current practice. And I'm not answering the questions for you guys, but I could tell you by past experience that I get called. I'm sure you guys get calls.
Yeah,
and if
I've
they
only
put
been
a
here-
signature on your proclamation without your permission, I don't think that's right. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I haven't been here even a year yet, but I know the process. That's how it happens. I get an email letting me know a proclamation is being created, and do I want to attach my signature? So I definitely get asked. That's the way it happens. If you don't know how it works yet, that's how we're working it.
So I've been on the council for a long time now, and for the entire time I've been on the council, whenever certificates of recognition, because there's different types, right? There's council certificates of recognition, there's mayoral certificates of recognition, there's proclamations. They're all slightly different. But I'm not aware. I don't know if this has happened. Maybe it has happened. I'm not aware of it. But even if a council certificate of recognition was requested to be given out, you have to get permission from the council member to put your signature on it. Staff doesn't just put it on there because the mayor wants it. So I'm not aware of that ever happening. That's never happened.
I just
but
know I get calls.
yeah. So
Any of them.
So I know staff wanted to respond to that question as well. Just wanted to clarify because right now, the requests are submitted to actually give some of these certificates or proclamations, and then staff works on them. But for the future, again, if these are adopted, how would that look? Would it just be kind of like what Mayor Pro Tem said, where each council member would be asked if it's okay to put their signature, or would it have to be approved in a council meeting? I just wanted to understand how that's going to work.
As for awarding an award for valor, commendations, key to the city, proclamations, and plaques, it's being recommended that all of those be approved by the city council before they're issued or awarded at a council meeting.
So it would have to be so let's give an example. If I wanted to give you a certificate of recognition,
I would be surprised.
that would have to, if these are adopted, if these changes are adopted, and I wanted to give you a certificate of recognition, from now on, it would have to be placed on an agenda, and it would only be awarded to you if a majority of the council wanted or supported that. That would be the new process. It would have to be placed on every single agenda.
Right.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to clarify, because okay. So thank you for clarifying that, so that we're all aware of that. Now, there's some things in here that I think probably shouldn't be in here, and I think we honestly haven't adhered to the mayoral duties. But for example, approving travel to events and conferences, like that has to be approved by the mayor. I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever. The mayor shouldn't be telling a council member, you can't go to the League of Cities. Like 4 of us attended the League of Cities in LA. I was never asked for permission, but I don't think the mayor should be deciding whether or not a council member gets to go to a conference. I definitely think that should be taken out for sure. Nobody should have that kind of power at all. And other than that, I think with the presenting at council events as well, unfortunately, when I was still a council member, I was not allowed to present at ribbon cuttings and things like that. I was prohibited by the previous mayor, unfortunately, and that's what he chose to do. He had the power to do that. And then since I've been in office now, it's been about a little over 3 months now. I know there were 2 situations in District 2, actually, where I asked Mayor Pro Tem, like, hey, would you like to present the certificate? Would you like to? He wasn't available, so I went instead, right? So I definitely think that council members should have the ability and should be able to present certificates and give remarks at ribbon cuttings, for example. I was not given that opportunity, but I think every council member deserves that. But other than that, I've never once been asked, hey, can I present at a ribbon cutting? I've never once said no, so that hasn't really been an issue. But the proposed changes is going to address that so that myself and any particular council member can give remarks and present certificates for those events. So I think that that's the right thing to do. And the last thing is about agendizing items. So the proposed changes, if I'm understanding correctly, and again, would ask staff for clarification on this, the proposed changes for adding items to the agenda, if adopted as written here in the staff report, will I still have the ability to add items to the agenda, or is that completely taken away? Currently I have the ability to add things to an agenda, but if adopted, I will no longer be able to add items to the agenda. Is that correct?
Not by yourself.
Okay.
You would have to go through the same process that the council members have to go through. There's got to be you have to make a motion to add an item to a future agenda.
Yeah, and I was hoping that we would add items for future agenda to every agenda. So at the end, before council closing comments, that we could do like a roundtable and say, does anybody have anything they'd like to add to the next agenda? And it would be here in the public, and then people that were here or were listening would say, oh, well, next week they're going to talk about, the skate park. And so we put that on so that the next agenda is discussed at the end of the closing of the meeting.
So I think that's fine. Well, that's kind of a separate discussion, but in terms of adding something to the agenda itself where we can talk about adding items to a future agenda. But specifically to this one, if these are adopted, as stated already, I as mayor, or whoever is mayor, unless the duties change in the future, won't be able to add items to the agenda anymore. So the only way to add items to the agenda would be city attorney, city clerk, city manager, or 3 members of the council during a public meeting. I think I don't have an issue with taking my ability away to agendize items, only if we reduce the number required to put items on the agenda down to 2. Instead of requiring 3 council members, a majority vote, to add items to the agenda. If we really, we're all talking about being fair and transparent and giving equal opportunity, especially to our respective council districts, I think we should reduce the requirement of 3 members of the council to agendize an item. We should reduce that down to only 2. The main reason for that is because if a minority of the council even wants to propose an item on the agenda and 3 other members don't want that, then we don't even allow for a discussion to happen. I think at a minimum, with 2 council members being the requirement to put an item on the agenda, we at least have the opportunity to have a discussion, because we can't talk about, like, I'll give you an example. The mayoral duties. During a public meeting, it was motioned by a council member from District 1, seconded by a council member from District 2, and then it went to a vote. But we couldn't have a discussion about the particular mayoral duties because it wasn't on the agenda, right? That discussion had to take place at a future meeting when it was actually on the agenda. So I think I would be okay with taking away my unilateral ability to put items on the agenda only if we also reduce that majority requirement to agendize down to only 2 members of the council. So that way we at least have a discussion, and then if 3 members of the council don't like it or don't want to move forward, you can still vote it down. But that at least allows us the ability, at least 2 members of the council, the ability to have a discussion about it before it's voted down, rather than just completely eliminating the opportunity to even talk about it. So I would be okay, again, with giving away my ability to agendize an item so long as we compromise and we reduce that 3 council member requirement down to only 2 council members. I think that's a middle ground as well. Council member from District 4 talking about compromise. I'm willing to compromise on that as well. And I think that's the fairest way so that we can have, open dialogue and discussions. So that's the last item that I kind of would like to talk about. Everything else in there I think is pretty straightforward. A lot of it is controlled and stipulated by California government code and state law. So Other than that, I think ultimately this will allow us to, have more representation equally across the city and our districts, and give more ability for discussion. So I'll conclude my comments, my questions with that, and if any other members of the council would like to speak, please hit your speaker buttons. Seeing none, would staff like to go ahead and move on to the second item on the agenda? Okay, perfect. So the second item on the agenda is A2. It's a review options for regarding procedures for selecting the mayor pro tem, and we have a report from our city clerk.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and council members. The item before you tonight is review of options regarding procedures for selecting the Mayor Pro Tem. I worked with this along with City Attorney, so we're going to go through them. So, as we know, there is no state law that dictates or governs the selection of Mayor Pro Tem. Not cities, general law cities like ours, or chartered cities. The current process of selection of Mayor Pro Tem now at Moreno Valley is the term for 1 year or until a successor is selected. Section 4.1, City Clerk conducts swearing in of the Mayor Pro Tem. If deemed a ceremonial meeting, there shall be no business conducted. And that's according to our rules. Options for selecting the Mayor Pro Tem. Cities have come up with a variety of ways for selecting their Mayor Pro Tem. And there's some good ones and some not so good. City Council election, how it works. This is probably the most similar to ours. The election of the Mayor Pro Tem is placed on an open agenda. Staff report presented. Mayor opens up for nominations by council members. Nominees are asked if they accept or decline their nomination. Mayor closes nomination. The nominees shall be asked to comment, and then there's a public comment period, then there's a vote taken. If there's a tie, there's a runoff, so it has to be repeated until we get a majority. Nomination by mayor. This is how it works. The mayor submits nomination to the city clerk. The election of the Mayor Pro Tem is placed on the open agenda. Staff report presented. Nominees should be invited to comment. A public comment period. Mayor calls for a vote. There's a vote. If less than a majority vote is received, they have to go. We go through the process again until they get majority. Seniority. This is how this works. The council members who have been on the city council for the longest continuous period of time is automatically appointed as Mayor Pro Tem. The consequence, the same council member could serve as Mayor Pro Tem for several cycles. Second place election every 2 even years. How this works is the council member who came in second the previous year is appointed as Mayor Pro Tem. If there is a tie vote, then the runoff is conducted. Vote for Mayor Pro Tem must occur every 2 even years. The next one is an equal opportunity. How this works is the council member who has not served as Mayor Pro Tem for the longest continuous period of time is automatically appointed a Mayor Pro Tem. Again, the item is placed on the agenda. Staff report presented. There's a public comment period. Mayor calls for a ratification vote. If more than one qualify, then there is a runoff. And here's how it works. For instance, District 1 elected on April 2022 never served as Mayor Pro Tem. District 2 elected in November 2021 served as Mayor Pro Tem in 2023. So that he or she would go down to at the bottom of the list. District 3, elected November 2016, never served as mayor pro tem. They would go to the top of the list. And then District 4, elected November 2020, never served as mayor pro tem. They'd go up a little bit. So we have those, how this works is just an example of the council member elected in 2024, District 3, 2025, District 1, 2026, District 4, and 2027 would be District 2 in that order. So this is the math again. District 3 has not served as mayor pro tem since November 2016. They would be at the top of the list. District 1 has not served as mayor pro tem since elected, which she or he would be the second. District 4 has not served as mayor pro tem since November 2022. They'd be third. And District 2 has served as mayor pro tem in 2023, so he'd be at the bottom of the list. Another way is percentage of votes, and how this works. The council member who received the largest percentage of votes within their districts during an election is automatically appointed as mayor pro tem. If a council member ran unopposed, then this would trump others. If more than one ran unopposed, then there would be a runoff. And the consequence for this would be not likely to be a tie. Same council member may serve as mayor pro tem until a colleague receives a larger percentage of their votes. And of course, the simple way to conduct selecting a mayor pro tem is drawing straws. Simple but effective. I'm available if you have any questions.
I think there's consensus for that last one. Okay, so council discussion. I see a request to speak here from Mayor Pro Tem Delgado.
There's a lot of effort put into this little topic. This little topic, it is not that important. I would tell you that right now. So, however, I feel when I got on here, that was the best way to do it, is trust the council to pick who they want as the mayor pro tem. So the mayor pro tem is ceremonial, 100%. I read it in the paper when they swore me in. I was very surprised that I was getting sworn in because that doesn't change anything. Why are you going to get sworn in as a mayor pro tem when you're still a council member? So that was 100% ceremonial. The mayor can't make an event. It's just like the chain of command. Who's going to go next and represent the city? That is what should be determined by the majority of the council. And that's just my opinion, you guys. If you guys say we change it to the straw, we change it to the straw because I believe in the democracy of the majority of the council. So if you guys say we want it a different way, 100%. And it's not about, I just happen to be the mayor pro tem right now. It's not about me. It's about the majority of the council. It's the person representing our city should have the trust of the majority of the council, and that's all I'm saying. And the whole, I was taught at an early age to work for what you got, go work for what you want out of this life. And I told you my story a long time ago. I was a very, very poor kid, and I worked hard to get where I am. And I'm not saying that I worked hard to get your vote for mayor pro tem. I'm saying it should be a trust factor from this group and not just a participation trophy, for sure, 100%. So, but I believe in democracy. I believe in the way that we have things up here, the majority rules. And if that's the way you guys want it, you'll never hear another peep out of me. You'll never hear, man, we should have not changed that. Well, it is what it is. You guys changed it. We changed it as a group, then it is what it is. So, again, there's a lot of effort put into this little thing, though.
Next, we have Councilmember Banca Santa Cruz.
That was a lot of time and effort for staff to bring that to us twice. Thank you so much for preparing that. I'm not sure why we're reviewing that. If it isn't broke, I think we should continue doing the same that we have done. Also, I have a question. Since there was a school board meeting and some of the public were at the school board meeting, are we going to open up public comments for these items now that the staff report has been presented?
That's up to the presiding officer.
Oh, can we open up? You want me to motion or?
So we don't do any official, I mean, we're technically past the public comment period. So I think we should probably just continue with the meeting. So that would be my recommendation. I think staff concurs with that as well. Okay. Any other requests to speak or any other council members? Okay. So for this particular one, I think that, like I mentioned before, the process for selecting the mayor pro tem, and I believe Councilmember Bernard brought this up as well when this was on our agenda before, about the selection of mayor pro tem becoming very political and very divisive. And I personally would prefer for the selection process to be rotational, so that it's a rotating mayor pro tem. That's just the most fair way to actually conduct that, and it removes any bias. It removes any, political alliances or affiliations and things like that. So I think that would allow this process every December to just be less contentious, be more fair, be more open, be more transparent, and so I would support a rotational mayor pro tem, selection of mayor pro tem, and I hope that at least 2 other members of the council would support that. I think I believe District 3 and District 4 have mentioned that they would support that as well. That'll conclude my comments. Yeah. Any other requests to speak from the council? Okay. I see Councilmember Bernard.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, can you turn on your mic, please?
Sorry, thank you.
Can you just
I'm going
make
to
a
yield my
motion? Let's make a motion to
Well,
open it up.
I can yield my time. I can yield my time to the member of the public that came in to speak on an item.
And Madam Clerk, how many requests to speak have been submitted now?
Give me a moment, okay?
Okay.
Nine, Mayor. 9.
9 more requests to speak. So I would ask staff for your recommendation. Again, we technically moved past it, but whatever staff recommends.
Honorable Mayor, it is actually the choice of the presiding officer or 3 members of council wants to make the motion to reopen public.
I motion to open public comments.
So we can't take formal votes in a study session. At least that's my understanding, unless.
Like motion, but we can do motions like.
But
parliamentary.
give me just one moment, council member, because I want to figure out how we do this, because I also want to make sure that, if we do it this time, then we're basically saying that we're going to do this every single council meeting, and if someone comes in after the fact, that we're going to go back and open. So I just want to be very careful with that, and that's why I'm just relying on staff to advise us here.
So legally, can we yield our time? Like legally, everybody agrees?
If the council approves it. So you can take procedural votes.
Procedural vote.
Yeah, if the council would like to, we can definitely, open back up to public comment and allow, since we gave 3 minutes on each item to each particular member of the public, we should allow the 3 minutes for members of the public for those 9 requests to speak. Are those 9 different individuals or 9 different requests on different items?
5 for Roy.
Yeah, they're pretty much the same people on different topics. Now, pretty much the same people over and over.
Okay, so 5 requests from Mr. Bleckert?
Yes.
Okay,
He's
6
got
requests.
several.
Okay, so I think this is something that we should probably figure out for future council meetings because it's causing some issues here now. So, yeah, if that's okay with the rest of the council to open it back up, we will go ahead and call up the speakers for those items, and we will give 3 minutes per speaker per item for items on the agenda. Yeah, and Mr. Bleckert, if you'd like to go ahead and come on up and go ahead and you can speak on each item so you can make sure you speak on all the ones that you'd requested.
Mayor, for the record, can you restate the motion and action of council?
I motion to reopen.
On the procedural action, sorry.
Yeah, just to reopen public comments. Right? Is that what you want? Okay, and I need.
And the rest of council agrees?
Yes.
Mayor, if I may interject, Mr. Bleckert wants to speak in all the topics, okay?
Okay, so that's all 6 items. Okay, okay, go right ahead, Mr. Bleckert.
Much to your enjoyment, I won't take the whole 18 minutes. I want to thank especially Ms. Baca and Bernard for giving me this opportunity, not only myself, but to show the public how this stuff really should work. Again, I encourage people to look at and see the process. But on this mayor's responsibilities, had we been following the procedures correctly, we wouldn't be in this condition. I agree with the recommendations, and I've said so many times, and I've said that whole deal, and I'm going to agree with the mayor. Any item should be put on the agenda by any council member and seconded by another member. I want my representative to have the ability to have the debate and discussion. If it gets shot down, as Mr. Delgado said, that's, like with the Mayor Pro Tem, that's the way it is. But that's what we should be doing. That's the process. We should have these things come each time. And we should have these discussions. And we can have a much civil discussion on this stuff if we do this. And this does give me hope for what's happening today. You're finally seeing the process of how it should work. I hope we will continue this in the future because I want to hear everybody's thoughts on this. That's how we get the best. I want to say, and I said on the Mayor Pro Tem part, I agree with Mr. Delgado's comments. In the end, this is not a life or death situation. It is. I say, and again, just taking from that, and I said it the last time, my preference, or if I was throwing it up there, I like the rotation idea of whoever's not had it has, I don't say it has to be mandatory, but they should be given priority. If they decide they don't want to do it, then it can go down the line. And like this, if the other 3 decided they don't want to do it and Ed's on there, go for it. That's fine and dandy. So I want to go to that. The other reports, and I will just say like this, and more of that, and if you want to go back to the model of how this stuff works on the study sessions, you just have to go back to how Tom Owings did it. He opened this session up. He opened these study sessions up. He actually is the first person, after many, many decades of us fighting for it, he got the study sessions televised. Transparency. A lot of people talk about it. He walked the walk. He allowed us to comment at a study session on non-agenda items. This is how we start the discussion on this. This is how we do it. And like I've said, I think we should really go back to the two, especially with all this stuff going on, we should go back to the 2 study sessions a month. And then again, I will put some of the proposals that of you two that have been on that council for 6 years and you've seen the paperwork that I've submitted to this council. I'll give the other 3, they haven't seen it, but you did. You know it. You know how to put this stuff together, or a proposal too of doing it. And you never once put it forward or put it to a vote or even discussed it. So don't talk about X, Y, and Z or this or that or this or doing that. You want to have an honest discussion about this stuff? Let's do it. And again, like I've said, and this is a proposal I put together. And I said, in of this stuff, why I said to go into 2 study sessions, eliminate these public safety committees and that. Let's put them on study sessions. Let's put everybody, I want to hear all of your opinions on these. As we move it forward, we can have these discussions at a study session. So when we get to the council meeting, we have a lot of the reports done, a lot of the stats. You have information. You even have, all of you have time to think about it and discuss it, and the public does. So maybe we will have more efficiently run meetings when we come to the time to make the decision, and we're not here till 2 o'clock in the morning like we have done in the past. Ms. Baca will remember those days very well of that. But that's what I'm saying is let's put this stuff together. Let's do this. And again, like what we're doing on this, we should, in a study session on this, and I'm not criticizing anything that's coming, but this is just my suggestion, and we've said it before, is have the report, have this, I want to hear the staff report. I don't want to come up here and give my public comments first, then they might have given me information that already answered my question, so we're duplicating things. It's how we make these meetings run efficiently and effectively and very simply. That's how we do this stuff. That's how we can change the image of this city. Is if we take this and we say, we're going to take the best, we're going to put it out there, we're going to put these stuff in the order we have. And we're going to turn this reputation around that we've had. We're going to allow people, and we're going to show this is how you do public policy right. Majority rules. That's how it is. That's how you got elected. That's how this board makes decisions. It's 3 votes. And I've said this many times. I am comfortable with any decision this board or any government agency makes as long as they're making it on clear and accurate information, and all of it. We all win some and lose some in the political process, and in the end of the day, after that's done, we go fight the next battle. This is the kinds of discussions I'm talking about. It's just like that. And I've come up here and said it, like with the Mayor Pro Tem thing. I didn't agree with, if somebody else wants to have that representation on there or that, I think it should be, because at the end of the day, as Mr. Delgado said, what difference does it make who it is? And I think everybody's district should have that opportunity to have their person in that position. It's not about personalities or that, or, I might disagree with the person that gets in there, but hey, that's the people of that district elected them. And just like I talked about on the agenda, in fact, I think we should fight the hardest for the minority opinion. Because in a lot of cases, that becomes the majority. Sometimes we look at this stuff or that, or everybody, if you guys agreed that you were going to arrest and imprison everybody named Roy for 10 years, I would have a problem with that, and I would be protesting that. See what, I hope that kind of clicks in what I'm talking about. It's that minority position. Yeah, there might be, and I'm sure there probably are. They'd like to silence Roy. And I'm sure a lot of people would agree with that. But that's not right. We know that that's against every principle we stand for. But that's what I'm saying. And I'm going to end with this. Why I'm saying that, because one person in the city stood for that minority right. And that was just, as Ms. Baca said, where me and Ms. Palomares came from, Moreno Valley Unified School District. They arrested her mother for exercising her constitutional right to redress her government and free political speech. And it was proven in court that they violated her rights. And that's why I believe we should defend the minority opinion in all cases and hear that. We might not agree with it, might not win, but in many cases, and we can cite them through history, the world has changed because somebody stood up. Somebody stood their ground. And no matter what was going wrong or how much or what the odds were, they stood for what was right. And I hope in the end, that's what we will all do. Again, I want to thank Ms. Bernard and Ms. Baca for giving me this chance and for you yielding your time. I hope maybe it's a little bit of inspiration that things will change.
The next speaker is Donovan Sadiq on items A1 and A2.
Good evening, council, staff. I hate following behind Roy and Louise and all those other people because they say everything that I wanted to say. But thank you again, Baca Santa Cruz, for the community outreach that you did last week, or was that this week? Yeah, that was last week. And one of the reasons I came here also was to hear the police department presentation that he said he was going to do today, and I'm sure he's going to do it. But just like Roy said, it would be great to have comments a little bit back or before, so that I don't want to repeat something that he might have said or disagree with or not have enough information. But in regards to this study session, the proposed changes to the mayor duties, I think it's correct. I think that's the thing to do, that, you know, every time a new administration comes in, what happens in our federal government when a new president comes in? They reverse everything the previous person did by executive order, And that's just how democracy works. It's ugly, it's not great. I know it takes a lot of power away from you, Mayor, but you know, sometimes you got to give to get a little bit, you know, you're not going to get 100% of everything. So I think the proposed changes should be something that should be codified into our city aspect, to see if the new administration comes in and they just want to, hey, we want to get rid of this, we want to get rid of that, because this is not a dictatorship. At the end of the day, one of the biggest problems before I got involved with politics here locally was you have these random groups that fight for power, and they just fight and they fight for power. You know, and once one group gets it, then they stick it to the other group, and then the other group gets it when they get their chance, and they stick it to the other group. That's why the United States is one of the most violent countries in the world. But anyway, again, you know, so I think that should be codified to where any new person comes in, they can do that. The review of the selecting of the mayor pro tem, I agree with Councilman Delgado. You know, it's purely ceremonial. I prefer the old way of the rotation, just who's ever there and just rotate it in. And hey, you know, so and so's been on the council for 6 years. Give them a chance. Let them, you know, have a little glory here and there. But I don't want to take up too much time. Again, thank you, Councilman Bernard, and for yielding your time. And this is something that we got to start doing, Mayor. I know there's some issues with people, and you know, you might have to stick it to them and whatever, but you really don't have to. You know, you got to reach out and lead. And you know, I'm not trying to, lecture you. But you got to put that branch out. A leader, a good leader, and Ed Delgado will tell you, you bring the factions together. And that signifies a good leader. When you can do that, you're on your way. Thank you.
The final speaker is Luis Palomares on A1.
I remember when this came up and they turned it into a study session. Okay, great. I'm glad we're here today. I thought there would be a lot more speakers. I was at the school board trying to run over here to get over here, talk about this. Thank you, council members, for letting us speak because it went by quick. So anyway, saying all that, as far as Ulysses Cabrera, you know, how many mariological duties was there? I think 48, something like that. And the council members made it clear that we want some, you know, equity in our say-so in our districts. Ed said it, Elena Baca Santa Cruz, Mrs. Barnard said it, and it's true. You know, you should have some input. You should have some say-so. And I know the mayor's been saying, well, it wasn't like this yesterday, and but it isn't. We're not in yesteryear. We're here today with a whole new council almost, except for David Marcus here and Cabrera that have been here for 6 years later. Do your homework, you know? So I think it's too much power for one man because we don't need a dictatorship. We don't need a dictatorship. We don't need a Caesar. We don't need we need fair what's for the people, the right for the people's rights, you know. And I've heard it say, oh, well, that's not fair because of this and it wasn't fair because of that. But when we talk about fair, it reminds me of when we're in school, little Johnny, let Paul play with that ball now, let him have his turn. We're not in grammar school. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that Ulysses Cabrera violated the Brown Act. We all got screwed. It wasn't fair that DA had to come down here and slap us into reality. It wasn't fair that, you know, if we want to talk about fair, was it fair to us all the way from up north to down south for people to be talking about fair? Was it fair to us that David Marcus said, what about the Brown Act? It don't matter. At the last council meeting, oh, all this, you know, democracy, it's a bunch of BS. Come on. No. We don't have to give this man too much power, you know, and I know these council members are in the dirt, they're making things happen, they're on the ground, they're running, they want the right things for their district. And how could just one man make decision for the whole city? Okay, it wasn't fair, it wasn't like, but it is like that today and now. And like Elena says, and Ed Delgado says, and Mrs. Bernard said, we're changing the page, we're turning the page here. This is your agenda. Accent, I'm thinking of Dr. Gutierrez, so sorry, I do that a lot. This is your agenda, Ulysses. This is what you wanted to do. You wanted a new day. Well, hey, it's a new day. Let's go for it. Let's make the right things happen for the right reasons. Thank you. I guess I'm going to go on the second one now. I think I wanted to talk on the Mayor Pro Tem thing. I put in maybe I wrote it wrong.
And just for clarification, what other items will Ms. Palomares be speaking on?
A2.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor.
A2.
Go right ahead and.
Okay, A2. Now.
If we could put the clock, there you go.
Okay. Everybody has to have a turn. Give me a break. I don't think so. The Mayor Pro Tem brings some integrity to the seat. Integrity, not violations by the Brown Act. I can't even think of David Marcus being on there. There's so many things he's done. He's been in obstruction. He's been in campaign, you know, on the campaign trail with, you know, the Corey Jackson people and the mayor, you know, K9 Corey. Come on. These are these people that are supporting that agenda. Our mayor is supporting that agenda. So as far as the Mayor Pro Tem, he has to be a man of integrity. Oh, let's everybody get a turn. Let's pull straws. Give me a break. Where's the integrity? When the DA has to come down and tell him, you know, or else we're going to sue the city of Moreno Valley or else. Where's the integrity in that? Where's the right in that? Where is it? I want to know. Tell me. You know, it's a shame and an embarrassment to our city if this guy gets in, because everybody's got to get a turn. It's fair. No, it isn't fair what happened. It isn't fair that we were violated. He violated the Brown Act, Dr. David Marcus, along with our mayor. It isn't fair that the DA had to come and tell us something. That isn't fair. So I can't understand why we got to give this man a turn. Anybody else, but not him. Because he has been an obstructionist in the city, an embarrassment to the city, violated the Brown Act, the DA investigated by the DA, falsified police reports. Come on, been an obstructionist in our city along with his people, and he knows who they are. I'm not gonna say they know who they are. Involved with the Corey Jackson bandwagon, that wants to take away our canines.
Try to keep it to the Mayor Pro Tem
Does
topic.
that count for anything? Ulysses Cabrera, our mayor? What is, let's give him a turn before he leaves in the next 2 years. Oh, it's fair? What is fair? It's not fair when you, Mayor Cabrera, were walking out Mrs. Baca's stuff the day of her funeral in the hallways. Is that fair to our community? And you and Marcus all together on all that one?
Let's keep it on the Mayor Pro
Okay,
Tem topic, please.
So the Mayor Pro Tem, I don't think so. I hope and I pray they don't give him a turn for what? To embarrass, humiliate it, and degrade us again? Because he's the next up for the seat there. Mayor Pro Tem, we need people of integrity. Elena Baca Santa Cruz, Ed Delgado, Shalinda Bernard. Yes, we need people of integrity and know what the hell they're doing, because he don't even got a clue. He don't even show up to the meetings. A lot of the boards and commissions. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. And just to add on to, I think what Mr. Blecker mentioned, I think is a good idea, and we'll talk more about it at a future meeting, but currently we have public comment before staff reports and things of that nature. I think it might be a good idea to reverse those orders for our agendas so that staff reports happen prior to public comment, like Mr. Bleckert had suggested. So I'll talk to staff about that and see if we can make those changes for the next council meeting. Okay, we'll go ahead and continue with item A3, which is the Citywide Pavement Management Program, and we have a report from Public Works.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Tonight, I am presenting the Citywide Pavement Management Program. I'll give you some updates on the current paving projects, show you annual revenue for this program, talk about some funding sources, give you a little idea about concepts with rehabilitation versus preservation, discuss the citywide paving needs, and talk about our current efforts. So we currently have a historic $50 million project in construction right now. This is 457 lane miles of road, which is being completed in summer of this year. And this is 10 years worth of our normal paving projects. For the annual revenue, we get just under $5 million to put towards roads rehabilitation and preservation, which gives us approximately 19 lane miles every year. Now, with those 19 lane miles, we do a split of treatment types. Approximately 26% is rehabilitation, which is the grind and overlay, and 74% is preservation, which is the slurry seal. So with funding, we have various funding sources we use for street maintenance and improvements. General fund is only used if resources are available in the adopted budget. We have gas tax, which covers maintenance for our projects. And just to note, the gas tax that's shown in this slide is actually a little bit higher than normal. That was due to the pricing anomalies of higher prices over the last year. So we don't always get this amount of funding. And obviously that varies year to year depending on the gas prices. So then there's also SB1 funding, which is actually the bulk of the funding that we do use towards our annual paving project. We also have Measure A funds, which covers street maintenance, And the past few years, we have been using CDBG fund towards our annual paving project. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about treatment selection and why we do that 74-26 ratio. So one of the issues that we have with minimal funding is how to balance and addressing rehabilitation and preservation. So rehabilitation, the costs are more, but it lasts longer. And at some streets, the condition of those streets really dictate that they need more of the rehabilitation because it just does a better job with the condition that they're in. So then there is the preservation, which costs less, so you can get a lot more done with the slurry seals, but it provides only a temporary wear surface. But to note that with preservation, for every dollar that you do spend in preservation, you are avoiding $8 to $10 in future critical repairs. And again, this is if they're used, that's used on the as the appropriate treatment for those particular roads. So in 2018, we had an assessment done of the roads in the city to determine their pavement condition index, also known as PCI. So our overall average PCI for the city roads was 65, and that is out of a scale of 100. So 7% of the roads were considered to be in very poor condition. Over 46% were considered fair to poor condition. And then, just so you understand, an average PCI of 80 is actually considered standard. It's also the goal that is used with SB1 funding, and we are at 65. So, with that thought in mind, why do we have such a need still? Well, we have over 1,000 lane miles of streets in the city. This is an asset of over $600 million. But historically, we have been deferring maintenance. That deferred maintenance is approximately $225 million worth of deferred maintenance. So please note that these numbers are derived from the 2018 Pavement Management Report, so they do not reflect any of the current costs and ongoing cost increases that we're experiencing with supply shortages. It does include the historic investment that we have made that was reduced out of it. And just like this iceberg that you see in this picture, it really is, we're only getting to that surface of this issue. Really, what we need is $10 million is needed annually to just maintain that current PCI of 65. And remember, again, the average that we really want is 80. And this does not address, this $10 million a year would not even address that needed repair from the deferred maintenance. So to bridge the gap between the 4.8 that we get annually and that 10 million, we need to use other funds, such as gas tax, Measure A, or general fund money. So, but even with this limited funding, there are several things that we are doing annually to keep our streets doing well. We have ongoing partnerships with development and utilities. This helps us get new road improvements and upgrades to existing roads. We also pursue grant funding. But please note, with grant funding, most grants do not cover maintenance on roads. It only covers new projects. And then there's also, we do active inspections on roads. And we have a crew that does what we call crack sealing. So that's when you put the black tar in the cracks. This is actually a very big preventative maintenance for us. And just so you know that last year the crew has actually performed over 1.1 million linear feet in crack sealing, which is a huge investment for the city. In summer, we have a project coming up to do data collection, to do another one of those pavement condition assessment reports. We're going to do this obviously after we finish the current project, so we have the new data with the new roads and all the work that we have been doing on there. And then finally, we have a 5-year plan that will be coming to council on the 21st. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for that report. Really appreciate that. Very good information. Any comments or questions from the council, please feel free to speak up or hit your speaker button here. Okay, just thank you once again. You know, this is very, and I know Mayor Pro Tem is not here, but we'll see if he comes back in just a moment. Okay, I have a request here from Councilmember Santa Cruz.
I've been getting a lot of good comments from our residents about the pavement and some questions about when their roads get scraped off and they think we're done and they're upset. It looks awful, but we assure, and they come back and we get an email later. Oh my gosh, they weren't done. I'm so sorry I even bothered you. And it's not a bother at all. I'm just, so we are hearing good comments. Where on our website can we go, can residents go to look at the streets that are in line to be repaired, part of our 10-year plans?
There is a, and I don't remember exactly where it is on the website, but there is an actual page that is dedicated to pavement management.
Yeah, I have it. It's www.moval.org/pavement. And so it's the website. It has our pavement schedule. It has the maps of the first 5 years, and I think it's in blue, and the second 5 years, which is in red. So if you look at both maps, you see the streets that are going to be done probably in the next several months.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And just wanted to, again, reiterate that there's a lot of good work being done out there in the community. Thank you to all of our staff, Public Works especially. This was last year that the council allocated the $50 million. So hats off to staff for, you know, getting creative and figuring out ways for us to identify that funding and make sure that we're addressing these needs, because, you know, no one likes to drive on potholes. It could cause a lot of damage, unfortunately, to people's cars, and whether that's a catalytic converter theft that goes on that we know costs money, flat tires and alignments and things like that can add up pretty quickly too. So this helps to address that, as well as public safety services, right? Making sure that our police and fire personnel can get to their calls as quickly as possible without any other delays and issues, as well as improving the aesthetic appeal of our city. It's really beautifying Moreno Valley. And so getting a lot of good responses. It's pretty common now for, you know, you to go to a city event or something and a resident mentions how happy they are with all the road repairs that are happening. So really happy to see it. And just one question for clarification. And with the $50 million investment that's split up into 2 phases, how far along are we in terms of, you know, 40%, 50% along? And also, if you can maybe provide an approximate dollar amount of how far along that $50 million we are into that work.
Good evening, Mayor. I'll be more than happy to answer that question. So phase 1, we're approximately 70% complete at this point. For phase 2, we're about 20%. So overall, we're getting very close to being halfway done. So just doing the math, we're approximately $20 to $25 million in terms of improvements being realized on the street right now.
Excellent. A lot of work being done, and a lot to go still, which is good to hear. And approximately, I know we have to take weather into consideration and labor and other things that might cause delays, but approximately when can the residents expect this both phases to be completed?
So weather plays a big part of it, and unfortunately we've seen quite a bit of delays here over the past 6 to 8 weeks. However, if the weather cooperates with us, we expect all the work, both phases, being completed by the end of the summer, at the latest early fall.
That's great news. Thank you so much. So appreciate that report. Once again, appreciate the information. Any other council comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item A4, which is the capital improvement plan, and we have a report from our city manager.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, tonight I'll provide you an overview of the capital improvement plan. So the city's capital improvement plan is done in coordination with the budget every 2 years. It's a documentation of public improvements, repairs, and upgrades that become ultimately funding requests. And this process provides a 5-year snapshot and assists with long-range infrastructure planning. Looking back at our last CIP as a point of reference, the 2-year total of funded projects was $28.3 million. That doesn't include grant monies or any amendments that have been made. The largest sources of revenues were the gas tax, MVU funding, special districts fees, facilities replacement funds, park improvement fees, cooperative agreements, which was specifically with the county flood control, and then equipment replacement funds. So we divided up all the projects into categories just for ease of developing the plan. And so basically it takes care of all of our projects, and it goes from streets to bridges to our electric utility and down to parks. What's covered here. My apologies. So on the process, a lot of work goes on behind the scenes to get the CIP together. The basic process starts with gathering the requests from city departments. Those requests then go through a vetting to determine the funding. Some projects have outsized or specialized funding, while others remain unfunded if there's no identified funding sources. Then there's a public hearing followed by adoption of resolutions with authorized adjustments to the final CIP and the operating budget, which essentially brings the two documents in sync with one another. So how do we go about selecting and prioritizing projects? There's city priorities, which are established through general plan and the strategic plan, as well as other initiatives. There are also department priorities based upon master plans, feasibility studies, and needs assessments. Then, of course, the funding sources are a big part of that prioritization process. Specifically, some projects may have restricted funding sources and others may be grant funded. So looking within our current 2-year cycle, we've got put together a draft of requests, and as highlighted here, we've got over $2 billion worth of needs identified, so it's quite significant. Top 3, I would say, just based on what we're seeing right now, streets, buildings, as well as parks, those tend to be the higher dollar amounts by category. With that, I'll turn it over briefly to Brian. He's going to provide some information on funding.
Thank you, Michael. Council, so as we look at the funding for any particular CIP and or budget, we start taking a look at what typically has been received over the years, and you will notice that this particular slide shows what has typically been used for CIP. So you heard Melissa in her pavement conversation or presentation talk about gas tax and Measure A. So gas tax is actually made up of 2 real funding sources. One is the typical gas tax that we had prior to Senate Bill 1. That particular gas tax is used for the maintenance of general streets, not for our repavement. So our crossing guards, street maintenance, concrete maintenance, graffiti removal, signal maintenance, and signing and striping all come from not only that funding source, which is from our what we call internally HUDA gas tax, but also our Measure A goes towards those pavement rehabilitation items. So it's not actually creating additional mileage or lanes that is in rehabilitation, but what it's doing is it's actually maintaining the streets to ensure that they don't degrade quickly, making sure that curbs and gutters are staying there, making sure that the signing and striping is occurring, and so forth. Senate Bill 1 is the main source of gas tax that is used for our pavement rehab. And so right here, this is a 2-year look for the next biennial cycle, and you're looking at roughly $10.3 million that go towards our repavement of our roads. The other item that Melissa had mentioned was CDBG. So these are the two sources that really have been able to meet some of that $5 million that she had kind of talked about per year. So CDBG is typically about 1.2 million per year. So over a 2-year look, it would be 2.4. These are consistent funding sources that help with repavement. Before I get into grants, we'll go through the various DIF accounts. So these are developmental impact fee funds that are paid on current development for future impacts that their project has on the city. As you can see, there's a multitude of various funding or funds available in each of these particular DIF accounts. I just want to highlight that, some of them are positive, some of them are negative. None of them meet any of the requirements that we actually have for keeping up, creating new parks and so forth. We have very limited funding if you look at these dollars and so forth. 3 million, 4 million, 5 million and so forth is not much when a government is actually building a project. It always costs us more money than it would any given developer or private entity. Special districts, when you look at special districts, which this next meeting you'll have a kickoff of the initiation process of our fixed cost. That's about 13.6 million that actually go towards CIP projects and so forth. As well as Moreno Valley Utility, you're probably looking at about $10 million within this biennial CIP cycle for their projects in maintaining and expanding some of their service. When it comes back down to grants, this is the big question mark. That's why there's question marks and it's highlighted. Although grants provide us a significant resource to build a park or to build something, it does not provide us any dollars to maintain. It does not provide us any dollars to go towards programming of any of the new services that might be needed from a new park or a library or new city hall and so forth. So that is the big concern when we go out for grants is how do we be able to sustain programming as well as maintenance. If you recall, there were 3 items that Michael had mentioned. One of them was streets at about almost 900 million. Obviously, that's a significant amount, but there was also facilities that was in the 600 million range. So keep in mind that is the amount of our current facilities that need to be maintained. And if they are not maintained, then as we continue to defer that maintenance, it becomes more costly in the future. We have limited funding sources for that. It's mainly the general fund that based on various internal service allocations that funds our facility internal service fund, which then goes and does all of the maintenance. So just trying to keep that in mind with giving you some various funding sources, not only from the CIP perspective, but also maintenance items that are also in the CIP, which need to be funded by the general fund as well. Michael?
Thank you, Brian. So just to provide a sample of some of those needs that we've discussed, we've touched on the pavement requirements in terms of dollar amounts. For the Juan Bautista Danza Trail completion, we need another $10 million. For EV charging infrastructure at city facilities, we need $4 million. A new park, $6 million. A new dog park, $2.5 million. A lighted 12-field soccer complex, $35 million. Animal shelter expansion for phases 2 through 4, $7.2 million. And then we'll hear from fire later on. So that's just a sampling of that 2 billion in terms of what our needs are here within the city. So that closes out my presentation. We will be bringing the full CIP document back to you for adoption in the coming months, and appreciate you allowing us to present this material tonight.
Thank you very much, Michael and Brian. Really appreciate that. And have a request here to speak from Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. It was very informative. I have one question. And I brought it up with Mike Lee before. Do we get any funding from RCTC in any street repairs or special districts?
Yes, actually, what I've referred to as Measure A is all from RCTC. So sorry if I didn't properly identify that, but RCTC is basically a half-cent sales tax on the gas that you pay at the pump. That tax is then allocated out to the various jurisdictions within RCTC's boundaries. That can go pay for what we call Measure A expenditures. And again, that all goes towards the crossing guards, street maintenance, concrete maintenance, graffiti removal, signal maintenance, signing, and striping.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just some brief comments as well. One of the things that I definitely would ask all of my colleagues up here to assist with, and I know you probably already do it in different capacities and different ways, but in the past, one of the things that really, I would say, frustrated me was, for example, when we had a lot of stimulus packages and monies being approved during the pandemic at the federal level and at the state level, we would see large dollar amounts being allocated in the state budget for other cities, right? Like 4 million for a park in another city and 10 million for something, and Moreno Valley, nothing. And that's one of the things that really frustrated me. And I think that, we as a council bear that responsibility of making sure that we're going up to the county, the state, and federal levels, communicating with our counterparts as far as state senate, assembly, Congress, et cetera, to make sure that, we're voicing our concerns, that we're at the table making those requests explicitly and consistently to make sure that we get any monies that we can. And I know sometimes there's, differences of opinion on particular policy matters, but the reality is that our state representatives and our federal representatives have a lot of ability to make those requests, especially when they're chairs or sitting on certain committees, right? They have more ability to bring funding back to the city. So that's one of the things that I definitely am working on, have been working on, and look forward to hopefully getting more funding in these budgets than we have in the past, because I don't want to see these surrounding cities getting money continuously and Moreno Valley gets zero. That cannot continue. So appreciate staff for the hard work that you're doing and making sure that we stay fiscally solvent, if not always in surpluses. Y'all are doing a great work. So thank you for the presentation. Any other comments or questions from?
Just a slight one real quick. The capital improvement list, that's comprised of wants or needs? There's a difference between wants and needs. So.
I would characterize it more accurately as an assessment of needs. So for our city to build out, ideally, we would identify everything that we need to build our city out. And it's on the list, and either we fund it or not. Obviously, the bulk of it is unfunded because we need to identify the funding source.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we will now move on to item A5, which is the police department presentation, and we have a report from Chief Reichel.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Moreno Valley residents. Tonight I would like to go over the contracted services provided by the Riverside County Sheriff's Office, the challenges we face based on the limited resources, and how we can do better moving forward into the future. The Riverside County Sheriff's Office and the City of Moreno Valley entered into a contract for law enforcement services in 1985. For the the past 38 years, the Riverside County Sheriff's Office has provided basic law enforcement services, collision investigation, and many other specialized services to the City of Moreno Valley residents. Currently, the City of Moreno Valley contracts with the Sheriff's Office for 158 sworn deputies and 52 classified employees for a total of 210 employees. These deputies are spread amongst 4 divisions within the station, and each division is managed by a sheriff's lieutenant. 4 divisions within the Moreno Valley Sheriff's Station are the patrol, special enforcement teams, investigations, and administration. In this slide, you can see how we allocate your resources. 84% of your contracted assets are deployed towards proactive law enforcement, with a majority of them dedicated to patrol. The Patrol Division, which is the foundation of every police department, is divided into 3 overlapping watches and supported by our traffic and CBAT teams. The 3 watches are our Watch 1, which goes from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., our Watch 2, which goes from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., and our Watch 3, which goes from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. The current contracted rate provides for 8 deputies, 1 corporal, and 1 sergeant for each watch. However, based upon current staffing, each platoon varies is generally staffed with about 9 to 10 deputies. Our patrol deputies conduct proactive routine patrols. They enforce state laws and city ordinance, investigate crimes, and arrest offenders. They respond to calls for service, natural disasters, and emergency situations. They solve community problems by implementing a zone policing model. Our traffic deputies investigate traffic collisions, minor and major, enforce California Vehicle Code, and education of cell phone and pedestrian safety. They focus on commercial enforcement, truck routes, parking, and school zone enforcement. And then we have our CBAT team, which is our Community Behavioral Health Assessment team. It's a collaboration between the city, the county, which provides a deputy, and RUHS, which provides a clinician. They respond to threats of suicide, psychotic episodes, mental health emergencies, and support patrol. Not all cities have CBAT teams, and currently Moreno Valley contracts for 3. Although currently we have deputies available to work this team, RUHS is working to recruit and retain clinicians. RUHS has been struggling with recruiting and retention of clinicians. Challenges include qualified workforce and ability to pass background, and working in a law enforcement environment rather than a controlled treatment facility. Next, we have our special enforcement teams, which consist of 26 deputies. Our set or special enforcement teams include special operations based on specific law enforcement needs. Our set teams are broken up into the following categories. We have our CCAT and gang team. The gang team is a proactive unit specializing in diminishing gang activity within Moreno Valley. The gang team conducts probation and parole compliance checks, gang-related search warrants, investigations into gang violence and crime, and gang registration and presentations. CCAT, or Career Criminal Apprehension Team, is part of the gang team. CCAT is responsible for monitoring and suppression of crime committed by criminals on post-release community services, or what you commonly hear as PCRS. Probation, parole, career criminals, and career criminals. They accomplish their goals by conducting surveillance sweeps and other proactive activity. CCAT also works with corrections and probation officials to accomplish their goals. We have our RBST team, or Robbery Burglary Suppression Team. The Robbery Burglary Suppression Team is a supportive unit designed to take primary investigative responsibilities for burglaries and robberies occurring in the city of Moreno Valley. We have our POP team, which is the Problem-Oriented Policing Team that handles continuous and ongoing problems not easily handled by a patrol officer. A patrol officer has to respond to numerous calls for service, sometimes even 2 or 3 calls for service at the same location. Patrol officers do not have the time or resources to find out the underlying reason or problem that creates the numerous small problems. The POP team uses various resources in an effort to help solve the ongoing continuous problems occurring on a daily basis. The POP team is a team that implements different plans of action outside the normal paradigm of patrol officers to solve a problem as a whole. This plan of action helps to remove or lessen a problem from any given area to alleviate continuous ongoing problems from patrol resources. And lastly, we have our homeless outreach team. The Moreno Valley Sheriff Station's Homeless Outreach Team, or HOT team, is committed to assisting the community with issues related to homeless through education and outreach. They address issues surrounding the quality of life encampments and make assessments of housing, substance abuse, and behavioral health needs through a collaborative effort with city staff, local county agencies, and nonprofit partners. By utilizing the proactive outreach support through resources in hopes of reducing the rate of recidivism, incarceration, and calls for service related to homeless. We have an investigative division, which consists of 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 11 investigators, 3 deputies, and 2 CSOs. The investigators generally work 8 to 5 p.m. The investigative division is responsible for following up on major felony crimes, high-profile crimes, investigating sexual offenses, investigating crimes against children, investigating misdemeanors cases with special circumstances. Lastly, we have our administrative division. It's comprised of the chief of police, a sheriff's captain, and a sheriff's lieutenant. The sheriff's captain is responsible for the overall administration of the police department to include all items related to planning, organizing, directing, staffing, coordinating, reporting, budgeting, and discipline. The sheriff's lieutenant assists the captain in managing the operation of the station and directly oversees the administrative processes at the station. These include our business office, records accounting, logistics, fleet, and community services. So our current resources, the current fiscal 2022-23 adopted budget is $53.9 million. This includes 4 additional patrol deputies and 3 additional motor deputies from a previous fiscal year. Additionally, the Sheriff's Office has migrated to a technology solution to help improve services and keep costs for contract cities low. The city has been able to support this effort by providing funding for citywide and flock cameras. Before we can look at where we are going, we need to look to understand where we have been. Beginning in 2011, the city began cutting deputy positions from the sheriff's contract. To date, we are down 28 deputy positions from our numbers in 2010. Additionally, outside forces have had impacts on crime and the operation of the criminal justice system. These impacts have created additional processes, procedures, and paperwork a deputy needs to accomplish every time an arrest is made or a subject is contacted in the field. As the city was downsizing its police force, the state was increasing a deputy's workload. Beginning with AB 109 in 2011, there's been a reduction in the average prison population from a high of nearly 175,000 inmates to 107,000 inmates today. With that decrease have come changes in victimization and reported crimes. Statewide statistics are through the roof. Following AB 109, Prop 47, known as the Safe and Neighborhood Schools Act, was passed overwhelmingly by the voters in 2014. Prop 14 created new misdemeanors and reclassified several felony theft offenses and misdemeanors. Prop 47 also allowed for the resentencing and release of anyone incarcerated under the old statutes. Then, in 2016, Prop 57 was passed by the voters. Prop 57, the so-called Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act, was designed to reduce the length of sentences for individuals serving time for violent crimes committed during California's Get Tough on Crime era of the 1990s. It allows for the release of inmates deemed by CDCR to be suitable through a variety of criteria, where in the past, individuals serving sentences for violent crimes were required to serve at least 85% of the time served before they would be eligible for early release. CDCR's new rules allow for early release at just 50% of time served. CDCR reports that under Prop 57 guidelines, in 2018 they released nearly 1,100 felons, another 1,184 in 2019, another 1,200 in 2020, 1,400 in 2021, for a total of 4,978 early releases. The reality, in 2023, decarceration and decriminalization in order to prevent so-called mass incarceration has left California and Moreno Valley with a new reality, that of mass victimization through increasing crime and the collective trauma of absence of public safety and confidence in our institutions. Let's look at where we are now. Population in Moreno Valley has increased by 12.3% in the last 13 years. However, sworn deputies have decreased by 15%. Thanks to the City Council, we have added 4 patrol deputies this fiscal year, and we will add 8 more over the next 2 years. That is a big help, and we cannot understate the value of the personnel to the city. But we are still challenged by a growing population, increased development, and federal and state policies that promote lawlessness and increase the workload of our deputies. Even with 8 additional deputies over the next 2 years, we will be at 11% decrease from our 2010 numbers. That's 28,823 more people in the city with 20 less sworn deputies. Our industry standard which is 1 per 1,000, would be 217 sworn deputies. We are 51 bodies below ideal. Looking into the future, a build-out goal of a population of 300,000, we would need 142 additional sworn deputies to accommodate. How does the contracted staffing level impact the citizens of Moreno Valley? Let's take a look. Our calls for service in 2022, what we see here is an average of 360 calls for service a day, and our response times and availability for proactive patrols are not that great. How do we know this? Well, let's take a look at 2010 when we had 28 additional deputies in service. Remember, council began cutting deputy positions in 2011. You can see the impact those cuts have had on the level of service provided. Calls for service have not changed much from 2010 to 22, but our ability to get there has. Look at the two slides together. Our priority 1 response times have increased by 2 minutes. Our priority 2 response times have increased by 20 minutes. Our priority 3 response times have increased by over an hour. And our priority 4 response times are up by an hour and 9 minutes. If you think this is bad, let's look at the cuts the policy changes have impacted on our violent crime rates in the city of Moreno Valley. Since 2010, we have seen a steady increase in violent crime in our community. In this slide, you can see how having fewer deputies, slower response times, increased population, and the impacts of the state legislative policy affects violent crime rate in the city of Moreno Valley. Without enough resources to keep up with the population, development, and legislative policy, we are not meeting standards and we are putting our public at risk. The current metric used evaluating the number of deputies needed is 1 to 1,000 ratio. Given the size of Moreno Valley and the population density, this is an industry standard we should strive to meet. When we compare ourselves with neighboring cities, you can see how understaffed, underfunded our department is. We're underperforming by standard ratio and by peer comparisons. And our response times and violent crime are the direct reflection of this. Bottom line, our city operates with deficient resources and our residents suffer. At this level, we cannot do anything about the negative impacts of certain public policies, but we can meet deficiencies with adequate resources, and we have options to help. Technology is truly the key to increasing the department's effectiveness as we continue to fight and reduce crime with limited resources. Technology multiplies the deputies' ability to perform their primary functions, which are to investigate crime, prevent crime, and regulate traffic and arrest offenders. With too few deputies, we need cutting-edge technology to give us the edge on the criminals. In addition to technology, I cannot express enough that we need additional staffing. A large and growing body of academic literature confirms that police presence deters crime and helps maintain public order. Currently, our staffing numbers struggle to meet the needs of the community. Adding additional deputies is something the community needs ASAP. The current metric used, again, is evaluating the need 1 to 1,000 ratio. We need to add 59 deputies to hit that mark today. Looking into the future, our projected build-out population, we will need to add 142 additional deputies. In addition to our staffing and technology needs, we need to upgrade and maintain our facility. Our current facility is over 25 years old and designed for a different era of policing. Currently, our building needs immediate upgrades to accommodate for additional women in the workforce, as well as an upgraded evidence collection, processing, and storage area to meet current safety standards and to protect our staff. To mitigate the immediate need for a new building, our main investigation work area needs to be redesigned to create additional workstations. Phase 1 through 3 conversions are in the existing CIP plans to expand the current facility to accommodate personnel and services as the city grows. We could hold off for a few years from doing these projects if our immediate needs are met, but the reality is we have outgrown the station. The Southeast Moreno Valley Public Safety Joint Use Station is the collaboration between police and fire to use existing land purchased for the Redlands Bordea Fire Station. This would be limited use for law enforcement while a full use facility for fire. This would aid in providing better service to the east side of the city. So, in a nutshell, too many Californians have felt the collective trauma in the absence of public safety. We hear it time and again in the public comment portion of our council meetings and our social media comments. Our community members are upset with the lawlessness occurring in our city. yet the direction from council is minimal to increase public safety. It's past time to quit talking about the problem and implement real solutions that will prevent the citizens of Moreno Valley from becoming victims. We're the second largest city in Riverside County and amongst the top 20 in the state. With a growing city population and development, our public safety division needs to grow with it. My recommendations, council, are take advantage of the technology as a force multiplier and employ it quickly and steadily. And we need to steadily increase the number of deputies to achieve the national standard of 1 to 1,000, which currently is 59 deputies we need to add. And we need to improve the existing building now through design change and building upgrades, and begin planning the construction and financing of future improvements for the facilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate that report. We will go ahead and move into council discussion. Any comments, any questions, feel free to hit your speaker button here. We see here Mayor Pro Tem Delgado.
So, Chief, is it fair to say that these are not wants? These are needs to provide public safety to our residents of Moreno Valley, the second largest city in the county of Riverside?
Yes, sir. We need to make these additions soon.
And then the cities that, excuse me, that you compared the 1 to 1,000 ratio, Fontana, Riverside, and San Bernardino are like-sized. I mean, Riverside has quite a few more, but their ratio, they have quite a few more residents, but their ratio is well above the 1 per 1,000. Fontana's just scratching the right there at 0.93, and then San Bernardino exceeds that 1 to 1,000. To get to that, we need to provide you and the station resources to increase that staff, right?
Yes, sir.
And I know. So here's the kicker is you get the fire guy is going next. The chief's going to talk about his needs, right? And we just heard the $2 billion need to expand and grow our city. So we're all fighting for the same pot. But you look back, and I'm not slighting the build up for sure, because that's what we're going to grow, and that's going to happen. It's a need that we have. But to provide public safety, both fire and police, should be a priority, and it should take precedent over a lot of the wants in our city, because you, like you said, these are not wants, these are needs to provide public safety to our residents. So I just wanted to clarify that these are not wants, these are actual needs to get us to a point where we need to be comparable to other cities the same size as us.
Yes, sir. I think our response times can kind of show that we need these, and we need this soon. Additionally, the violent crime, the aggravated assaults are through the roof compared to where we were when we had those additional 28 deputies. I think if we want to make the community safer, these are things that we need to prioritize.
And more deputies equals faster response times, a deterrent just by a show of force, presence, officer presence. All that combined is will bring that down.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any further council comments or questions? I just wanted to share a few comments and ask a couple questions as well, Chief. Thank you again for that presentation. It's always good to see, especially statistics, look at the data, and appreciate you sharing some of that here with us, so we can better understand the issue and then better plan for solutions on how to move forward and address these issues, which in this particular case is public safety and addressing crime, violent crime, property crime, and making the city safer. So one of the questions, and it's come up before, and this is more in the wheelhouse of Mayor Pro Tem and yourself and your troops, is volunteer sheriff's deputies. I believe we have an existing program, and the Sheriff's Department has that existing program, but do you have any suggestions, or there may be any opportunities for the city to do more in terms of trying to get residents, whether they're retired or maybe they're just willing and able to give their time to volunteer as a volunteer sheriff's deputy to possibly assist with some of it. It's not the solution to all of our problems, but it could help in some ways. So is that something that we might be able to do more of in terms of outreach and getting folks to volunteer?
Volunteers are only helpful in certain instances. In order to effect arrest or deter crime, you need to be a sworn deputy. We do have a reserve program, but you must complete an academy to be part of that. So the volunteers could assist with traffic control and minor issues, but the issues that I pointed out tonight would not be impacted at all by increasing our volunteer forces.
Thank you. So, yeah, hopefully, well, that's something we can have a separate discussion on to see what more of the city we could do to get folks into that, because it will help in some capacity. So, the next one, like one of the issues that has been identified, we see the increase in response times, right? It's heading in the wrong direction, unfortunately. And one of the possible solutions is to get more boots on the ground, hire more deputies. So that brings me to my question, which is the hiring process itself and being able to actually bring people in to public safety careers. And so if maybe you could share a little bit of, I guess, how that is going and maybe any trends that we're seeing, because there's a lot of competition out there. In terms of different industries, different sectors, and people maybe choosing other careers instead of going into public safety. So is there anything that we might be able to do to address that if there's any issues in hiring officers and getting folks to come into the academy?
So one of the good things you have is you contract with the sheriff's office, and we currently have a very popular sheriff, and we are being sought out regularly by lateral employees to come here. We currently have 4 basic academies held every year. Prior to coming to Moreno Valley, I worked in our personnel department or division, and we were putting about 75,000 new recruits, or 75 new recruits through each academy. So we are hiring like crazy. The sheriff's department is a sought after police department or police agency for employment. So we are able to get people through the process and get people hired relatively quickly and out in the field. So if you authorize more additional deputies, we could probably have them in the field fairly quickly.
Got it. Thank you. And yeah, I was going to ask about some of the data related to violent crime and property crime, and you did have a slide on that. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I would be interested, and this is a separate conversation as well, to dive even more into that data. For example, looking at the increase in violent crime, diving deeper to identify different variables or factors, right? For example, if there is an increase like we see in violent crime, are there particular, maybe is it more young people that are committing these crimes, like to kind of go more into the detail, right? So that would better help us to address that, right? If there is a particular need with a certain group of people, that we can allocate resources to address those situations. So, we won't dive into that today, but that could be helpful for us as well to see those additional statistics and that data. So when we're making decisions, we can better decide where to put that money and where to allocate it. The flock safety cameras, that's one thing that you mentioned as well, and that's one of the things I worked on with the previous council and some of the current council members to actually approve and put in place, and I see them everywhere, which is great. Personally, I'm a big proponent and advocate of technology in general, and in this particular case with public safety, technology can be beneficial in various ways, one of them being reducing risk to life, right? Using technology to assist in public safety personnel's efforts and reducing people actually being in situations where they could get hurt or lose their life. That could include things like drones or artificial intelligence, flock safety cameras, for example. So with flock safety cameras, how is that going so far? I think it's been in place now for maybe about a year or so. But is there anything you could share with us as far as how successful that the system is? And because we get the daily reports, and I actually am glad to see that almost every day there's something about a flock safety hit, that something came up on the flock safety system and we were able to apprehend a criminal or return property to its rightful owner. So can you share with us anything about how that flock safety system is going so far?
It's a very good asset to the department. We're very thankful for it, and we appreciate the support in that venture. So thank you.
And lastly, just appreciate your report once again. Thank you for sharing that with us. And, ultimately, kind of like my colleagues mentioned as well, that one of the biggest roadblocks to getting things done is always funding. It comes down to money. So, moving forward, it's trying to find that fine balance of how we address public safety issues, how we address crime, while at the same time funding, our fire personnel and public safety. And that's the $1 trillion question that we all have to constantly try to figure out, who's going to get how much and how big a piece of the pie. So, moving forward, we have to keep both the issues that are happening now, today and now, and how we address those, and then also thinking long-term and how we can be proactive and making sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that there are less criminals and less criminal activity in the future. So that's all the comments that I have for today. I do see here a request to speak from Councilmember David Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, let's touch on the reserve programs. Several years ago, I brought that up, and there was not really no interest in it because of the financing. Is it still the individual who wants to be a reserve still has to go through the academy, post-certificate, but he doesn't spend that many hours as a regular officer would? Is that correct?
There are 3 types: level 1, level 2, and level 3 reserves. What you want is a level 1 reserve out that can go out in the field by themselves, that could act like an actual deputy, unsupervised, and available to actually handle calls for service and make arrests. Because it's a reserve program, it's not their full-time job or full-time duty, and it's a volunteer type program. Not that we see very little interest in reserves.
What's the cost? If someone was interested in that program, does the department finance with uniforms, weapons, their equipment, or does that individual have to provide their own?
So just like with anything, they would have to provide their own training because they're not hired. So they would put themselves through their own the academy, and they would have to have the post certificate. They have to acquire that on their own. We would provide them with a uniform and the safety belts and such, so they would be equipped if they were interested. But they would have to provide themselves with their initial training. And
the level 2, I know you had touched on the level 1. They work by themselves. They can. They do basically what a regular police officer would do. Level 2, can you touch on that? What their duties would be?
I believe they have to work supervised by or as a partner deputy with a sworn officer.
With a sworn, not with another reserve?
Not with another reserve, no.
Okay, and level 3 is?
I don't know. I don't recall. I don't know the exact duties, but it's going to be the lowest of the 3. So they're going to have very minimal interaction in the field. And again, all of these things require the issues that we wanted to impact, which is violent crime and being a proactive deputy. The only one that would have any impact on those issues would be a level 1, because that would be the same level as a full-time officer.
Okay, and it's basically like a part-time job.
For free.
But they don't get paid, right?
Correct.
They just do it as a volunteer, or?
Yes.
Wow.
They have to, they're required to have so many hours per pay period or per quarter. And oftentimes we see retirees, they'll turn in their full-time badge or whatever, and then they'll just request to be a reserve deputy.
Reserve deputy,
And,
yeah.
But to get a lot of work out of them is very rare because they're retired and they just come to work and they fulfill that basic.
They feel safety with that uniform still on, huh, and that badge.
But we do see it. I mean, we do see them do it, but.
That's something that would help out in this city if we had a reserve program, or the sheriff would, level ones. I think that would be a very beneficiary to the city.
We do have a reserve program. It is available. Again, it's just not it's not a highly sought after volunteer piece. Again, you're going to have to, number one, invest a lot of money into the program and get the training initially. And then number two, you're going to have to come out and do the work of a sworn deputy on your free time. So it's just one of those volunteer programs that's just not sought out by the community members.
And does that help a level one if he wants to go full-time? That does help if he applies for a full-time deputy job, but he does have to go back to the academy, correct?
Correct. But at this current moment, if someone would like a full-time deputy job, they're available.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And just to add on, I'll get right next to you. I'll get to you next, Councilmember Bernard. But to add on to Councilmember Marquez's comments, I was just wondering, and just the idea came to my mind, with the reservists, right, with the volunteer sheriff's deputies, possibly looking at doing some kind of, I guess you could call it a stipend type of approach. Just trying to think of different ways to incentivize people to actually go into the volunteer program, and see if maybe that makes any kind of difference. And I know ideally we would have sworn deputies that are armed and patrolling our streets, but just thinking of different ways that we could possibly get level one reservists to actually step up and become reservists. So just a thought, just an idea that came to my mind right now of something that might help. Councilmember Bernard.
Chief, I know we're having a lot of discussion right now about actually hiring deputies, but the one missing component we have yet to discuss is where we're going to put these deputies, correct? So another issue we have is the capacity of being able to house them, because deputies, like social workers, at some point have to enter the actual report, right? Am I correct, Mr. Okay. So we also have an issue of we need to find a place to house them because you guys are out of space over there. And at the time when it was built, there weren't as many female deputies also, correct? So that's another issue with spacing in your locker room area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so we're also discussing not just the ability to be able to hire, but we also need a place to put people so that they're able to change in and out, as well as have time to do their paperwork. Can you tell us how long on average, if we were talking about an assault, which seems to be our highest, how long would it take for them to write up a report on an assault on average? How many hours would that take a deputy out of the field?
So on average, an assault call for service, you would have your initial response, which would take an investigation at the scene. So that would take anywhere from 30 to a minute to an hour. You would bring that person back to the station where you would have to complete a probable cause statement and a booking sheet. And then typically, if you're involved in an assault where you fought with another individual, you would require some sort of medical clearance from a hospital. So then you would have to take them to RUHS to get them okay, what we refer to as an okay to book. They would be seen by hospital staff, get cleared to be booked into a facility. So we're driving from the west side of the city to the east side of the city. We're about 2 hours into the call, maybe 2.5, 3 hours, and now before we even get to drive all the way into downtown Riverside, where we can book them into the facility. So just on a simple assault risk, which you saw doubled for us, we can spend anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. So if we get an assault, that deputy is taken out of the field to do paperwork and booking and processing from anywhere from 3 to 4 hours.
Thank you. I just wanted to give an example of not just the spacing, but how long we're talking about a deputy being out of the field to write a report. So we have to think of some of those things when we're talking about staffing levels also. That, at any point, technically based on those numbers, we could only be at half staff of whatever's out in the field.
And this is a big change, again, in policy from the state. As things have progressed in the future in technology and different things, and different issues have been pushed down and legislated upon us, it's just increased the workload on that deputy. So we're working differently than we did previous years because of all the extra stuff we have to do.
If I may add to, the deputy did all that 4 hours later. He has to physically write the report. Then comes 4 or 6 months later is the court time. So he has to follow up with court, and then that takes him off the street because he has a court date. So just it's.
Real quick, Chief, do we have jailers here that only do the booking or transportation, or is that CSOs do that?
So typically, we try to have our CSOs do that. Again, CSOs are being overtasked with things. If you noticed, we only had, I believe we had 51 or 58, I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but in comparison to our neighboring areas, they're close to 100 classified staff. So as we have 1 or 2 that are doing those transports for us or taking them to the hospital, we're making multiple arrests and needing to do multiple transports. So at some point, we're just out. We just don't have them, so a deputy has to do the job.
So if you were to hire, or we were to hire more CSOs, Brian, that would help the officer within the booking and the time he spends in the station after an arrest. So would you say that would be very helpful, hiring some more CSOs?
Are you asking me or are you asking the chief? Because you said my name.
Asking the chief, well, yeah, when it comes to money, I always have to
Okay.
bring your name up.
I will say from a funding perspective, we have increased the CSOs almost every budgetary biennial cycle, typically by about 4 CSOs. Obviously, when you take a look at CSOs compared to sworn deputies, they are of a cheaper classification. But again, based on what we're trying to handle here, I'm going to defer to the chief to see if the CSOs would actually alleviate some of his concerns.
Absolutely. CSOs can handle a large number of things, not just the transports and the booking process, but they also can handle priority 3 and priority 4 calls, past burglaries, things of that nature that tie up our traffic accidents, traffic control. If you think about this, so we have a major traffic accident at one of our intersections. One deputy can't handle that call, so we have to close down the roadways, and we have these 6-lane, highways running through our city. So sometimes it can take anywhere from 4 to 5 deputies to control that intersection and manage that scene while we're waiting for tow trucks and making sure everyone's safe, because you remember the days, Councilman Marquez, where you're out there, those cars don't stop you when you're doing traffic control. So we need the staff out there to do that. So now we're tied up, and we have these big accidents. We have them regularly. We have the big streets. We have the big trucks. All of these things are complicated in our investigations. They just require staff. So adding CSOs help because they can do the traffic control, and that will keep your deputies available for priority 1 calls for service. But it's a balance, and we need to look at that balance amongst all the other things we have in the city.
And do you bring other resources and CSOs from other jurisdictions to help, or just Moreno Valley?
We only bring in what we contract for. So the city contracts for a certain amount of hours. We provide those services, and whatever hours are available, we ensure we have staff here. So if we're short on hours, we'll bring in people from other areas, other stations, but not typically.
And Councilmember, I'd just like to remind you and Council that based on previous budgetary conversations about CSO, that they do not equate to the 1 per 1,000 residents. CSOs are non-sworn, so they would not be part of that particular calculation. So if the national average is 1 and Council's desire is to get to 1, CSOs would not get us there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any further council discussion or any questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to our last item on the agenda, which is item A6. That's the fire department presentation. And we have a report from our fire chief, Jesse Park.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you for letting me present this current service and planning report. As you know, we have 7 stations, 7 engines, a ladder truck, and 2 squads. We run an average of 68 calls per day, and our current insurance rating is at a 3. The calls are broken down on the left, but I think it's easier to look at the pie chart in the middle. We ran over 22,000 calls last year. About 85% of them were medical aids. Our average response time is 4.9 minutes, and we met the national fire standard 65% of the time. We did not meet the standard 35% of the time. Within the fire department is prevention, which does the extremely important job of inspecting and permitting, OEM, which includes our EOC volunteers, emergency training, and recovery. We do this with 106 personnel total, 3 in fire administration, including myself, 11 in prevention, 5 in OEM, and 87 firefighters, including our 2 battalion chiefs. The administration and emergency management is city, fire prevention is county staff, and the operations is CAL FIRE staff. I project it will cost $27 million to run the fire department this year. Most of that cost is due to salaries in operations. Is this enough? Is 10 pieces of equipment and 87 firefighters enough to serve the community right now? It is not. This chart shows our stations and the calls they ran last year. And if you'll focus on the station 65 column, you will see that engine 65 ran almost 4,000 calls last year. If you look further down, you will see that that means that the engine company was committed to a call almost 14 hours every day. Please orient yourself to the map. Station 65 is on Indian and JFK. All the stars with parentheses are stations already built, and those without the ones we will need in the future. So now let me bring these calls in that occurred last year in 65's area. If engine 65 is committed 14 hours a day, someone else has to take one of these calls. Who does that? Another one of our fire engines. We always respond to a call. We never say no. The problem is all of our stations are busy running their own calls, so we're not able to fully serve the community right now. This affects our insurance rating and our ability to meet the national standard. Fire departments are guided by standards and ratings, mainly NFPA and ISO. The NFPA standard is to get a piece of equipment on scene within 4 minutes, 90% of the time, and within 8 minutes for ladder trucks. Part of our insurance rates are based on whether we have an engine within 1.5 miles of residences and a truck within 2.5 miles of buildings 3 stories or greater, or with a needed fire flow of 3,500 gallons per minute. Last year, we could only meet the NFPA standard 65% of the time. So here's the calls in the entire city. And now I'll bring in our 4-minute response areas. And now I'm going to pull out the calls there so you can see the gaps in coverage that we have, especially in the southeast. So that's how far each one of our fire engines can travel from their station within 4 minutes. More striking is our gap in ladder truck service. This polygon shows how far our truck can drive in 7 minutes, which does not meet the needs of the city both on NFPA standards and ISO ratings. We need to get back to at least 3 trucks again. As a reminder, we had 3 trucks up until 2010, but due to the recession, we could not afford to keep them. But the recession did not stop the increasing need to serve our community. We increase on average 15% every 5 years. And if we continue this trend, we'll be closing in on 40,000 calls by the time the city is built out. So here is the easy way to look at this. In 2020, we had 20,000 calls. In 2030, we should be around 30,000 calls, and in 2040, we'll be at about 40,000. In other words, when we double our calls, we need to double our service. So right now, we have 10 pieces of fire apparatus running calls, and we need to add 5 pieces right now. We need to catch up to serve the community. But it'll take time. It takes about 2 years to build fire engines and about 2 years to build fire stations. So by 2030, we need to have 15, and by 2040, we should have at least 20 pieces of equipment and a few new stations to cover the entire city. Another consequence of being busy is the need to adjust the responders' schedule. So currently, our firefighters are still on the old forestry 72-hour shift, while almost everybody else is working a 48, as you can see, San Bernardino, Riverside, Ontario. As you get busier, you have to decrease the shift for safety. So LA is on 24s, and New York is so busy, they run 8-hour shifts. The department and the firefighters union knows this, and so upcoming contracts are addressing the problem. The new contract plans on increasing staffing from 2.66 full-time equivalencies to 3.0 and moving to a 48-hour shift. This will increase wages and our budget, but also overtime will be reduced to help control some of these costs. And hopefully this will help recruitment and retention. There's a nationwide firefighter shortage, and it has been difficult to hire and keep quality people. Emergency service is not cheap. The fully burdened costs continue to go up with inflation and insurance. It costs about $1.5 million to staff a squad each year, and it is more expensive to staff the larger pieces of equipment. This chart shows the cost to purchase new equipment, and there are many options, but I've highlighted the ones we currently have now. As you can see, a new ladder truck or tiller costs about $2 million and takes about 2 years to build. Costs about $22.5 million to build a new station with all the associated fees, and about half that to do a large renovation. This shows the estimated cost to build all the fire stations the city will need. It would cost over $145 million in today's dollars. So, outlined here is a realistic plan with costs to get us on track to 2040. This includes renovating a station, building a new one in the southeast as a joint public safety station, and staffing 5 more pieces of equipment by 2030. Then moving forward, continuing to add staffing stations and apparatus into 2040. Is this realistic? I mean, is this plan appropriate? Well, if we look to our neighbor to the west, you'll see that Riverside City is already where we'll need to be near build-out. They're already running 40,000 calls a year, using 14 stations with over 200 firefighters on more than 25 pieces of equipment and a budget of $70 million. We will need to be very close to that if we continue to grow the way that we expect. Now, as the county and our neighbors grow and increase their fire service, by being part of the county and CAL FIRE system, we may be able to adjust. But overall, if we double our call volume, we should plan to double our services. Thank you. It's the end of report, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Chief Park. Appreciate that report as well. We have council comments and questions from Mayor Pro Tem Delgado.
I'll make this quick. I know everybody's tired. Insurance rating 3.3. What is, or 3.37 or whatever?
3-3X is actually our insurance service office rating. Verisk insurance offices, they use a host of factors for a fire rating schedule. This includes the water delivery, training, how many dispatchers we have, and one of the criteria is the ladder trucks. And so Riverside City is at a 1. Temecula just went to a 2. We were at a 4. We're now at a 3, and we'd like to raise it higher.
The monies that is required to build out, is that in the current $2 billion CIP?
Yes, sir.
That is. Okay, so it's not one or the other.
No, we included the CIP. These numbers are matched up with the CIP report.
I know in Pasadena, they have a public safety building. They have fire and police combined in one building, and I know it's huge and it's underground and it's pretty state of the art. Brian, that's what we need to start thinking. The southeast end.
Thank you, Councilmember. Actually, if you noticed in both the PD presentation and fire presentation, there's this joint use line at $37.5 million. So in essence, what that is a joint use facility out on the east side. Mainly, it would be mainly fire, but PD would be able to use it. And that there's some synergies there because now the deputies don't have to drive all the way from the west side to the east side to then for RUHS and then drive all the way out to Riverside. They could actually book into that holding area on the east side and go out towards Banning or the desert jails as opposed to driving all the way to the west side.
So that sounds like you have it thought out. So what do we need to do to make it happen? Oh, money.
Fine, $37.5 million. When we bring these things as part of the budget and the CIP, they've already gone through a lot of thought.
Thank you, Chief.
And just to add on a couple of things here as well, with the new development that's coming in, whether that's commercial, residential, industrial, we collect things like development impact fees, for example, which go into construction of new public safety facilities, for example. One of the questions is with the World Logistics Center. If you could just kind of refresh our memories, I believe part of the WLC specific plan includes funding for new police and fire facilities, and recently been hearing that the construction on the WLC is going to be coming soon. So with that in mind, do you have any estimated timeline as far as with the WLC when we might see some of that money for fire facilities?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's an MOU that says that the Highland Fairview Corporation will purchase or create a turnkey fire station, meaning everything in it. They'll build it, they'll provide the apparatus and down to the TVs and recliners and things like that. Because of the distance it would be from any of our other fire stations. So that was built into their contract. I've been in contact with Bobby from Fairview. And they are interested in also purchasing the apparatus prior to even the build-out so that their facilities during build-out could be protected, if that makes sense, right? Because they're starting on the west side and then moving towards the east, and they'd like to be built out by 2030, so it's something that we need to discuss together as a group with the corporation and the city to decide when it's appropriate to trigger that MOU. And
thank you.
It would be a ladder truck.
Yeah, which is one of the things that we need, right?
It would be a ladder truck, sir, probably at Station 58 to start with, so that it could protect not only the current citizens, but also the construction that goes on. And then at some point, it could move out towards Gilman, where the station would be.
That's good to know. Thank you for that reminder there. And as you said, those are further discussions that I think we should probably have now that things are moving on the WLC, because realistically, again, the issue is always money, and one of the primary sources of funding for these facilities is development impact fees. And so one of the models that we see that is successful is, rather than the city going out of pocket, dipping into our general fund or our reserves and paying for some of these, the better model is to have a developer construct it for us, lower costs, et cetera. And so look forward to discussing that further regarding the World Logistics Center, as well as other future developments that might be coming in, and identifying opportunities for maybe in lieu of DIF fees, having developers build these facilities for us. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention as well was looking at our existing DIF fees and possibly seeing if there's any room for changing anything there. So we can have those further discussions later. But the last thing too, earlier today we actually had meeting with some folks from Moreno Valley College, and they are in charge of the Ben Clark Training Center. And one of the questions that we asked was the capacity that they have for accepting nursing students, for example, LVNs, RNs, and then everything that they offer at the Ben Clark Training Center. So that's one area where they mentioned that they are at capacity and that there's room for growth to allow more slots. And I think that that's something that we definitely need to assist in to make sure that we're getting more folks into those training programs, into those courses, and getting them out into the field. So that's all I have for comments. Are there any other comments from the council? Okay. Seeing none, thank you. Thank you once again for the reports. Long meeting. I think this is becoming a common thing now. Feels like we all enjoy this, but time to get home now. So unless staff has anything else or the council has anything else, we will go ahead and adjourn today's study session meeting at 9:17 p.m. Thank you.